Hello. Let me just make sure this is starting. Steve McRae's channel. Going out as Mr. Atheist and Eric Murphy Rum and Coke Night. But it is not. It is the OJ Flat Earth and Illuminati after. So, that being said, streaming this from NonSequitur Show Discord server. I will be putting that in the description in the live chat as time goes on. I wish it was. I had some rum and coke. I don't. So I will be doing this. Comes. And without further ado, join our chat in progress. Thank you very much. Because it's me and one other person in the room. Sandring, are you there? Hello, is Sandring?
Yes.
Okay, it's just us two on the stream right now. Our streaming. Did you watch? You happen to catch that?
I don't think I get that. That's like right up there with pine trees and elephants.
Yeah, it was.
The amount of, I have to say, amazing, because halfway through that, I was done with the guy. Like, look, completely disregarding, understand any of the evidence you whatsoever, brush it off by saying it's not true. So therefore, not valid. Okay, there's no way anybody's this guy won't accept anything that's outside of. It's not. I mean, he's not even willing to look at it. Immediate. Just have a lot of patience like that. That look at the evidence. This out.
Can you do me a favor? I think this is on your side. If you go into your Discord settings,
yep,
there should be a way to figure it out on my own. There's this input sensitivity. Turn it off auto and turn it not as more sensitive to when you're, because it's cutting off a lot of your words. But yeah, that was a dumpster. I wish more people would come in here because that was a mess. I know Steve's planning on coming in a bit because he said he was going to eat. But it was painful for me as a producer. I had to do something after that. The guy sends me his picture. And he sent me 16 pictures at first. It was just OJ stuff. I'm like, okay, so this is going to be the OJ conspiracy, which I could deal with one conspiracy theory. And okay, so, and then he had some videos. Okay, well, I could deal with a couple, 2-3 videos. Exactly what he did. He sent me them. So I said, are these, and photos were numbered. I said, is the number of the numbers on the photos the order you want the photos to appear in? Thinking that's usually the way this works. No, that's not the order he wanted the photos in. So I had to renumber the photos manually by hand, keeping in mind this is an hour before the show starts. Or at least an hour before I have to stop doing whatever he wants and start working on audio for people. And then he sends me 24 mixed photos and videos and 4 additional YouTube videos relating to everything else he tried to talk about. He kept saying the producer has it, the producer has it. No, I don't have it. I have the OJ stuff that you had me do. That's all I had time to put together because you sent your media order in an hour before the show starts instead of this morning like Kyle told you. Sorry I'm ranting, but jeez, man.
Well, at what point were you supposed to even know when to switch the slides?
Well, yeah, he never even said that. He just said, "Oh, go to this slide, go to that slide, go to the slide which this," and I was just like, "Go to the slide. This person, does the slide have a number? Because all I've got's numbered, and photo number this and photo number that. That would have been helpful. At least then I could have referenced. I don't know the people. I haven't thought about the OJ case. I didn't care about the OJ case when it happened. That's how little that shit mattered to me at the time. And this guy,
Yeah, it didn't matter either.
I was like, I really. So he killed his wife, or his, I don't. Was she his ex? Was his ex or something? And this other guy, he killed him, right? And as far as I know, and everybody else knows, pretty sure he did it. Or he didn't do it. So what? How does it affect me? Why does it have anything to do with me? It doesn't. All I know is it screwed up my television shows for months on end because it was all about that in the court trial. Kind of like the Ollie North thing. The Iran-Contra affair. It was a summer of I don't recall, I don't recall, I don't recall. Don't care. It was worse than Ollie North because Ollie North at least was something about the state screwing up my tax dollars.
Well, then he just shotguns so many things all at once, and you're like, how do you even respond to all of that? It's like you've moved 32 points beyond the first issue that I had with what you had to say, and you just keep going.
Yeah, he just stopped. He says it's going to all tie together. I said, I didn't tie this together with all the twine ever made. Literally, there's not enough rope in the world to tie it together.
And not even the biggest ball of twine in West Virginia is going to help you. Some of that was actually very painful to listen to, especially, when he's given the actual mathematical formulas to compute what the real force of gravity is going to be, and granted they're rattled off pretty quickly if you're not familiar with them, and weren't able to write them down really quick. You probably wouldn't be able to follow it either. But I don't think he didn't even try. He just said, "Well, it's just chalkboard stuff. It's not reality." Okay, I guess physics doesn't actually exist, and math doesn't actually predict anything. The one science we have where you can actually prove something, and I guess it's just chalkboard nonsense.
Because go out and look at the world, measure stuff, see how the numbers relate. You can use numerology, which is complete bullshit. It's numbers that don't mean anything. That's okay. But the minute we try to actually put the numbers together and see how they actually relate in any kind of reasonable fashion, that doesn't work for him. It was just, God, stop.
Well, and he contradicted himself on numerous occasions. He starts talking about how important the numbers are for numerology, and yet when he's given the numbers for things like computing the distance to the sun or computing, exactly what the altitude of the ISS is and how fast it's traveling and what its actual size is, though he doesn't care about those numbers at all. So the numerology number is apparently important. Actual math numbers for computing things that are actually useful, not so important.
Not important.
Steve, you really need to update your picture for Discord.
Yeah. Well, there's a long story behind this picture, so it's an icon. It doesn't matter. But Dave, you held it together. You have my undivided or undying gratitude and sympathy. A lot of you, and way too much. And yeah, that was bullshit. So don't stress. Have some pot. Get high. Do what you got to do. I'm making some dinner.
I was so close to booting him on so many. I didn't want to, then I wanted to.
Though we did end at 33 after the hour, though, so Illuminati confirmed he was right.
Yep. 33 after the hour. I looked up, but it was 11:33. Oh, weird. Stop streaming.
Sandra, you made some really good points before I came in. I just started listening a little bit, but it is weird when you have such conspiratorial nature for certain people that they're willing to deny things like math, physics, logic. And so that kind of level I don't do exceptionally well with. Now, if there's been some kind of conspiratorial, like for example, Kyle loves the Sphinx thing. Okay, I'm okay with that because look, I've actually read a lot on that and why it goes back to 10,500 BC. Do I believe that? I don't know. I have no idea one way or another. But you know what? That's something that is a little more subjective than this is math. This is what it's going to be if what you're saying is true. Oh, this is not what it is. Ergo, what you're saying is not true. It's you can't get around that. So when you're in that realm of disconnect with reality, that you are willing to suspend mathematics, science, physics like that to that level, that I think does borderline on some kind of mental thing. And that's why I have a really hard time dealing with people like RussianVids, because if he does have mental problems, I have ethical concerns at that point. I really do. I'm not just bullshitting. I mean, $5. Thanks for the drugs needed to deal with these idiots. Alcohol is a drug, I guess. So I'm going to have a drink with it. I have some wine ready to go with I'm making some chicken. So
he's got 5 on it.
Thank you.
5 on it.
Does that mean that, if he's that far gone, do you not think that there's some kind of mental issues going on there? I mean, come on, there's never been a conspiracy theory he doesn't like.
I've been doing lots of research on what the research is dealing with IQ, because it's something that we don't know enough about, and I think that we should know more about it, and it's gotten such a bad rap. So I've been looking at what we do actually know, and one of the correlations to low IQ is belief in conspiracy theories to the extent of dismissing actual evidences. And you could literally show them evidence directly in front of their face, like saying, well, the sky's blue, while they're staring at the ground saying, no, it's not, it's green. And it's like if you would simply just look up, you would see that the sky is indeed blue. No, it's not, it's green. It's like I said, we don't know enough about it, but that's definitely one of the correlated aspects of very low IQ. And another problem with lower IQ, not being able to comprehend basic principles, basic concepts. They just, like you're talking to them in Greek, and then they look at you and they really literally did not grasp a single thing that you just said. It made no sense. You might as well have just been talking like a baby to them. And so they just dismiss it. Well, that can't possibly be true because I just didn't understand a single thing that you just said. But this here, I understand this. So this is what I'm going with.
And thanks, George. George also like $5 Canadian, like $3 or $2, I think, for liquor to forget about tonight. Thank you, man. By the way, Sonny, well, first of all, turn up your mic. Your mic is a little bit low. But you're right. I've actually been in those situations where I can tell the person I'm having a conversation with is not understanding a goddamn word I'm saying, to the point where I feel like I'm speaking a foreign language to them, right? And I've seen that. I've seen it in their eyes. When it is, and they'll come back every single time with such a disconnect, no relevancy to your question whatsoever. And I think that's what RussianVids does. He does it frequently. He did it to me. He did it to Reds. He's done it to Kyle. He's done it to Dave. He did it to everyone. And I think that you're probably spot on with that. I think that when people have that low of understanding, that low of comprehension, that low of IQ, whatever you want to call it, I think that's exactly what they do. They don't know how to respond in a cogent way. Therefore, they're going to throw out whatever and hope that you're going to go down that rabbit hole with them rather than keep their feet to the fire and have them really address the problem. And even when, Reds asked him a simple question, you know what a doppelganger is, he didn't know how to respond.
Well, on that particular issue, my whole take on why he didn't want to respond was, one, he didn't really know how to. It's something like, well, I've heard the term. Like, I've heard the term. If you suddenly ask me, explain what a doppelganger is or define a doppelganger. Okay, I'm going to have to think about that for a minute to actually get all of my thoughts. But if you say, oh, look, there runs a doppelganger, I know what you're talking about. But I think that he was more concerned with he was being led into a trap, and so he didn't want to follow because it seemed like such a non sequitur that something was, it's like, no, I don't want to go that way because you're trying to ambush me, and I don't see what it is you're trying to line up here, so I'm not going there with you.
Right? These aren't traps. These are conversations. I don't know why people don't give the principle of charity more often, and what's called the cooperative principle, that you kind of go in with certain maxioms, Greece's maxims, that you are going to give only the amount of information that you need to give, and there's other specific things of having a good dialogue, and it's hard to follow them. But basically, the cooperative principle is very simple. You go in with good faith. You go in hoping that the person telling you something is doing so in good faith. They're not trying to screw you over. They're not trying to mislead you. You take things, what they say, without these weird implicatures and stuff like that. And I get that. I'm down for that. But when you have somebody with a conspiratorial nature like that, you think that any question you're asking them, they're trying to lead you down some weird rabbit hole because that's what they do. But it drives me freaking nuts when people can't answer simple fucking questions. I mean, if you don't know something, just say you don't know. I do all that. I didn't, like the guy that he mentioned. I didn't know who the frick he was. I was like, I don't know. Reg was like, I don't know either. You think all those Jewish people know each other? No. So I don't know why. Maybe it's projection. Do you think it's projection that they'll realize that they do it, and therefore they think that we do it as well?
Yeah, that's the whole thing that I get, because they try and specifically lead you into these little traps. Like a gotcha, you don't have an answer for this, especially like when he started throwing out all these names. It's like, do you know who these people are? Well, when you ask a question that seems kind of sort of out of the blue, because you're going to get to an illustrative point, which you don't want, you really don't want to tip them off ahead of time what point you're trying to make, because if you do, it kind of spoils the whole point you're trying to make. And so as soon as you do something like that and it seems out of the blue to them, I do think that that's exactly where their mind goes.
I think you're right on that. I think you're really spot on. Right. By the way, who else we got in here? I don't get on Discord much, so if I'm ignoring anybody, I really don't mean to.
I just popped in, but that was quite the frickin' show.
It wasn't the big dumpster show that I was thinking it was going to be. I didn't want a big dumpster show. It was just enough of a dumpster show, right? It was just enough of a shit show that it's going to be watched, and not to the point where everybody wanted to gouge their eyes out, or more so their ears.
Well, I mean, the amount of different loops that he was jumping between numbers and numerology and the moonland, it was pretty rapid fire, that's for sure.
Well, he
Sometime in the beginning, though,
wouldn't stay still. Like, even with the picture he sent me, didn't tell me when to switch. Didn't go in any kind of, like I was telling Sandra, kidding. Stay in order. Didn't tell me which number picture you want. You just expect me to know what slide you meant by telepathy. Oh, he was driving me nuts. As a producer, it was a nightmare.
Do you also notice, though?
Producer has it. No, the producer doesn't fucking have it.
6 times.
See, I honestly thought that today would be an easy day for you, Bools. That it would just be have somebody on and let them rant for a while, but nope.
Do you guys also notice that the less informed a person is, the more they tend to use visual aids like YouTube and more conspiratorial stuff? I'm fine with diagrams and charts and things like that. Like Rumpus loves his diagrams, and he's very good at them, right? No problem with that. You know, like showing the video that Red's had because he actually demonstrated stuff. But when it comes to the conspiratorial stuff, it's like, I just even do the show. I had somebody message me, "Hey Steve, you got to watch this video on abiogenesis." I'm not interested. It's not about, you know, like Frank Tor. I'm not interested. They have, if they can't tell me what their arguments are, I'm not going to go watch a 2-hour video because they think it disproves all of science.
Well, I think there's a little bit maybe of this involved because I'll do this sometimes as well. Somebody will ask me about a belief that I've got, and you know, it's something that I
can't hear you.
Who knows?
Yeah, you're a little bit quiet. You might want to turn your mic up.
Quiet. He's zero. I can't hear anything he's saying. I can see it.
Can you right click his name and turn him up?
Maxed up, actually.
Oh, I could hear. Are you talking about his Sandring?
Yeah, I could hear him.
I couldn't hear him. Yeah, that's weird.
Huh. That's right.
Maybe
want to try jumping out of the room and coming back in?
Discord also, I think, has a feature where if you hit F5, it should refresh itself.
Yeah, that'll bring you right back in. Has got any questions from the live chat about the discussion? Feel free. I mean, I don't think we could have done anything any different. The first part was just OJ stuff, and I just said I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to listen to this guy fucking ramble on and on, which he did. He made no cogent point. He made no. Anybody even know what his argument was? Can anybody tell me what his actual argument is?
My question is this, Steve. Why was the XXX 666 when the X's are 10s, and why didn't he point out that there was 3 X's and, you know, 3 10s, which is 30, plus the 3 X's is 33?
No, I don't get any of this numerology stuff. I mean, Wed's pointed out you can make anything to do anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty ridiculous. The whole thing was just something else. It was.
That was due to the chart that he was using.
Yeah, he had this chart where he had all the whole alphabet laid out in 3 rows.
Yeah, he's probably using like some sort of a traditional numerology chart that's used to like measure names and birth dates and whatnot and determine certain numbers and qualities and whatnot. I don't know.
Right.
Depends on what type of numerology he's talking about. If he's talking about the practice of numerology or just I like to add numbers together.
Right.
Like,
but FOX lined up, the letters F, O, and X ironically line up under 6. Anytime you see Fox, apparently, 666, which is, of course, the number of the beast in Revelation. Whatever.
And I'll tell you right here now, as soon as people start talking about numerology, I'm just already tuned out.
Yeah, as it comes up.
Or cranks, you know. And I'm not saying that flat earthers are not all cranks either. They're cranks too. But
if you look at the numerology, let's see.
Oh, and we got Mr. Intelligent Design in chat responding to it.
Yeah, whatever. I'm in a generous mood. I'll let him rant and roll today.
Just real quick.
It's your stream.
Did you guys think about bringing up? Who was that dude you guys had on the other day? Who was?
See, by the chart I'm looking at, it says 6 is U, V, and W.
Dave, go ahead.
What about that dude the other day that came on that had this theory about Yahweh being this ancient king of farmers, and he was talking about how the numbering system, where the numbering system was like 1 through 60. Did no one bring that?
Base 60. Yeah.
Yeah. I unfortunately I didn't get to see much of the stream due to having a meeting.
I don't know what Jay's argument is on that. I mean, I know that they did use base 60 and sometimes, but yeah, I don't get into any of that numerology stuff. It's just absolutely stupid.
Yeah, especially considering that there's different charts that have entirely different contradictory schemes. The FOX
right?
being 6 is in a fair number of them, but an entirely equal number of them seems to be UVW.
Very simple way to test this stuff, like even with astrology. I'll go get a random astrological forecast for like today, which it applies to. You know, if you could do that like 90 out of 100 times, then you have a significant thing. You have a statistical significance. If you can't, because obviously, you know, you go to 7 different astrological sources.
Steve, you're just not woke enough.
I'm not woke. I have loss of wokeness.
I think the numbers.
You've been on the show too long. You've got loss of wokeness, man.
He slept his
numbers represent certain archetypes. And they have
He's been infected with snooze-ons.
Psychological effect on human
That's
beings,
for you, Edgar.
Don't buy any of that bullshit. But you know, I'm sorry. I may be agnostic on the proposition of a deity, but when it comes to like pseudoscience bullshit, it's fucking bullshit. I am not even going to pull punches on that. Numerology is astrology is absolutely mind-bogglingly stupid.
Well, Bertrand Russell said that mass psychology would be kept to the governing class, and it was the most important subject, in his opinion.
Well, I like Bertrand.
Am I any louder now?
Oh, you're good now.
Oh my God!
It's night and day.
So
Yes.
I went ahead and got my headphones and plugged my headphones in for audio, and now I'm just using the phone's regular speaker.
Much better. Oh
That
my
is
God.
way better.
Orgasming.
Sounded like you were in a I don't know what.
Yeah, I've got a noise canceling Bluetooth specifically set up for truck driving use, so it eliminates so much sound. The problem is when I use it for other applications, most people have a very hard time hearing me with it.
That episode that we just had on the Non-Sequitur Show?
Kind of broke up there.
Was he on the road at the time during that Non-Sequitur Show?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't, no.
Oh, no, somebody else was.
Because you would have crashed yourself at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would have in that one. I would have been screaming.
I'm going to tell Kyle we have to add a disclaimer about driving, especially, and we'll do it just for you.
Okay.
I don't want you to get like in an accident listening to this bullshit sometimes.
I listened to one of your shows while I was driving down the road. It was great. It passed the time. It was entertaining.
May induce road rage, though.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
No, that show. I wish I can remember which one it was now. I was listening to you guys live because I couldn't pull over to stop. I had to get someplace within a certain amount of time, so I couldn't just stop to watch the show. So I just stuck it on YouTube and played it through my speakers on my truck and just drove down the road, and it made the time pass great.
When they're driving, when they're at work, when they're just doing housework, when they're doing menial stuff, that's the greatest compliment you can get, because look, obviously there's a lot of shit people can listen to, and they decide to listen to the dumpster fires we have. That's saying something about them, actually. But you know, I don't know. I listen to these things too, so I can't talk, right? Because I'll listen to a good dumpster fire just like anybody else. I have no shame.
Oh, I think it was the coin guy. I don't think it was an actual dumpster fire. It was actually an interesting thing to listen to.
Through that, I would definitely listen to the coin guy, Rick. He is that is some fucking cool shit. Yeah, but it's hard when you can't see with that particular types of video, right? Because he does show the coins, which obviously makes it better, right?
Yeah, and I run into that problem several times with, you know, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and some of them are audio from actual shows somebody is doing that they've uploaded in podcast form so you can listen to them. So sometimes I don't get a lot of the visuals, and they're visual heavy. So sometimes I miss out on that. But when I have, 11 hours every single day of driving down the road, that's a lot of time. And I just happen to love learning things during that time. I try to make the best use of it. Otherwise, I just get stuck inside my own head driving down the road. And that's never a good thing.
Message me, what kind of topical stuff you want. If you want certain topical stuff, let me know. I'll be trying to arrange it.
You guys got a shout out on Talk Heathen today as well.
Talk Heathen?
Yeah, with Jamie and them.
Non-Sequitur?
Yeah, Yeah, they mentioned non-sequitur on the air.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we got him tomorrow.
Yeah.
From Talk Heathens. And I like all that crowd. I mean, I like, they got a good group over there. And I also like Atheist Edge.
Yeah.
I think the community is getting stronger. I think that the people having all these channels are trying to help out other channels, and I think there's a kind of camaraderie there that we all have the same goals, and that one of which is to keep system, right, secularism, and to get rid of shit like younger creationism and flat Earth. But let me ask you guys real quick, because we got like 100 people watching. Do you guys prefer streaming like this from the Discord? And let me give you the advantages and disadvantages. It's easier to set up a hangout. I don't know. So,
and you get video.
It's harder for me to porn bomb you on Discord.
Yeah, exactly.
I
think Discord's easier for people to join in, and we don't have to worry about snipers.
You really can't be porn bomb because you don't show up if you're server muted, and anybody who's new is automatically server muted when they come in. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say you can just assign someone a role as soon as they come in. If you want them to be here or whatever, and kick them as soon as you need to.
From a listening standpoint, I mean, obviously, if you're just listening, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But if you're in the live feed and part of the crowd actually engaged with the hangout, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the Discord like this, or do you prefer more of a hangout or hangout with OBS style?
Well, I'm in a unique position because I'm on my phone 99.9% of the time to do everything. This format right now works to me just as well as Google Hangouts. I had never used Google Hangouts until that very first time you invited me. So I didn't really know how it works. And on my phone, even if you're streaming, I can't run both the live stream to see the video of everybody and watch the chat unless I set up my laptop as well. So I have to be stopped in order to do that.
It's a little more convenient in most cases then.
Well, it's also Discord causes weird things with my phone settings with it ringing. So sometimes I have to uninstall Discord and then have to reinstall. It can be a pain in the ass because Discord hijacks my ringer settings, and that's not a good thing.
Looking at the live chat, it looks like kind of a mix. So what we'll probably do is just continue like we've been doing. Sometimes I'll do a regular hangout because they're fast to set up. Sometimes I'll do an OBS stream, and sometimes I'll do this format. And then right now, this is actually Dave doing this. So thank you, Dave.
No
I think if it's going to be a really small hangout with very specific people, stick to hangouts. But if it's more like a really big show and maybe a lot of people want to chime in and chat with people in the after show, maybe Discord's better for that.
And
yeah,
I think so.
And to be fair, Discord's not particularly more difficult than OBS Hangout. I mean, anything with OBS is the same effort. Really.
With the Discord though, Discord allows more opportunity for people to join, right? I mean, anybody can come in here, and they won't be shown until we verify them, kind of thing, because they'll be server muted. But anybody can go click the link. It's much harder to get a freaking Hangout link out because of the fact people can snipe, right? So,
well, not only that, but you have to have a way to give them the link too. And then if you just put it out there for public, then everybody's trying to get in, and so it can be a pain.
That's the problem with the Hangouts. And I really can't stand the fact that they try to market that bug as a feature, right? And because I think it is a bug, the sniping thing. I don't think that, I can't imagine that was ever planned, but
the reason they say it's a
if it is, whatever.
Steve,
but
the reason they say it's a Steve is don't have a way to fix it, but they want to sell that way of fixing it. They sell it as a corporate perk.
Yeah.
So they sell it to corporations, people who are willing to pay for it. Sure. But it's a bug they know how to fix. They just don't want everybody to have that fixed. They want to charge for.
Oh, really? They can fix it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's software. You can fix anything, pretty much.
Yeah, of course they could fix it.
Yeah.
Well, and they're Google, so.
To fix it.
Look at Hangout. Look at
Hangout. The only reason that's a fix is because it doesn't have the outside chat. So that's not a fix. They just took half their features. They took out the outside chat. That's why. That's not a fix. Best. So when you snipe from the outside chat, everybody knows how to do it anymore. That it doesn't actually move you from the actual Hangout. How hard going to be to put code in for that?
Again, I'm extremely new to the whole Google Hangouts thing, so I have no idea what you're even talking about.
People can hijack a channel with Google Hangouts if they were so inclined in a way that causes trouble.
Ah, that would be bad.
Yeah, it's one of the other advantages to Discord.
Yeah. With Discord, if y'all get unruly, I could just end the stream. Literally unruly. Go to sleep.
Well, yeah, for the most part. I mean, I kind of still don't like things unattended, but I've done it before.
No, what I'm saying.
If you end the stream, that's right. Even if you don't,
I don't ever leave it unattended. I did that once. Somebody got stupid. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was me. I apologize.
It was. No, it wasn't you.
Some 19-year-old.
It was Steve, wasn't it?
19-year-old trollish.
Oh, who you're talking about?
So what did they do?
Well, they just started saying stupid stuff on air. I was trying to go to sleep and I had set the automatic. I was trying to go to sleep and I vaguely heard it up and hey, you can't say that stuff. Not only is it against our terms, it's against YouTube service. Guess what? It's connecting those to my computer.
Oh yeah, that'd be a bad thing.
Yep.
Although I will have to say, Steve, the amount of restraint on the show was pretty impressive. For the number of times, and especially the number of, I think, what was the heck was his? See, I've already forgotten his name. I'm trying very hard. Russian something.
RussianVids.
Yeah, he was very bad about. It really started getting annoying because he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead." You're like, "Just shut up. Let me go."
Every time I was talking, and every 3 seconds he would say something. And flat earthers do that same thing. It is something they all do. I don't know what it's called, but it's basically a manipulation trick that they want to prevent you from having a solid line of thought. And I don't know why they all seem to have mastered that skill, but they have. Go watch any flat earth discussion I have with people, especially the last one. I mean, RussianVids did that. I would be talking, he'd be like, that's why, do you have Tourette's or something?
Yeah, it was. But again, the amount of restraint, it could have just turned into just essentially a big shouting match, and at least you could hear most everything. I'm not sure that was necessarily a good thing. I don't know if I wanted to hear all of that.
He's mastered that.
Holy crap.
One thing I try to do too when I set up the sound is I do fudge the balance a little bit. The person has their own kind of separate sound spot. That kind of helps a little bit with the talking.
Yeah, we've got the stereo spread kind of fanning people just enough that they have their own sonic space.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That's also an advantage over Skype because you can't do that with Skype.
Yeah, it's impossible. Doesn't allow multiple inputs.
Sean Carroll said, if a fluffer did that to me, Steve, I'd just sit there and cross my arms waiting for the fluffer to shut it. That will never happen. A fluffer will never fucking shut up if you don't at some point say, hey, enough, because they just go down one rabbit hole after another, just like RussianVids did. I need some serious. He needs to focus on something. I mean, because his brain's just all over the place. It's like a Jackson Pollock.
I love how he said it was all gonna tie together. I told it. Hey, this couldn't tie this together with the largest ball of the world.
That's in West Virginia, by the way. I've seen it. It exists. And it's big.
Twine, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the largest ball of twine exists.
He's a
Another one would be...
disinformation agent. I think he's part of the conspiracy.
Oh, speaking of being part of this conspiracy, and he kept going on about 33, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh crap, my last truck was number 33, and the only reason this truck that I own now isn't number 33 is because you have to wait a year for the truck numbers to fall out of the system before you can reuse them.
Well, the master numbers
confirmed
in Freemasonry are 11, 22, and 33, right? And when I was watching the Virginia Tech shootings go down live, first they reported 11 dead, then they reported 22 dead, and the final tally was 33 dead. And I'm pretty sure when something like that happens on a national news story like that, that's super popular, that it's some sort of signifying to like the Freemasonic Brotherhood or something.
I do not remember that happening during the.
Well, I do. I was watching it happen live on CNN when it was going down, and at first, like, they reported 11 dead, and then it was 22 dead an hour later, and then like the final tally was 33, including the shooter. Like, it's pretty odd that they're reporting it like that, and then it just aligns with the master numbers of Freemasonry. I mean, I don't think that's a coincidence.
I think that's fucking retarded, to be honest with you. Yeah, anybody in my opinion that talks about mass shootings, that's why they didn't happen and people didn't die, can fuck off. I'm not saying that you're advocating for that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying in general, when these people are that fucking deluded that they think that actual people didn't die and those families are not suffering, they're not welcome.
I'm pretty sure
I don't have anything to do with them.
There's people in power.
Just think about it, dude. Think about it. These people have real families, right?
There's people in power that want to take our guns. So it could be like, I think people really die, but what it could be like some trained sleeper assassin for all we know.
People died.
That's doing this.
People died, and the whole point is when people say these things didn't happen and these people are still alive, like the Challenger people are still alive, blah blah blah, still alive. That's worse to me than flat Earth, because now you are fucking with people who've had loved ones who have passed away, and a lot of them being American heroes. I have no respect for them. As a matter of fact, I just got in a big argument on my Facebook page, and I said I wasn't going to make a video on this, so I'm not trying to go into too much details. But because I explained to a person that this is my fucking page on YouTube, not YouTube, on Facebook. Yeah. I control who can be on the YouTube page, or God damn it, the Facebook page. And if somebody is promoting this narrative that actual people didn't die in American heroes, they're denigrating their memory, I have every goddamn right to fucking kick them off my page, just like we do on the NonSequitur Show, just like we do on YouTube. Nobody has a right to come on somebody's channel and spew bullshit. That is not a fucking freedom. That is not a right. The only rights you have on somebody else's forum is the rights that the owner gives you. And so I was livid because this person was telling, well, you may have a right to do it, but what about a moral obligation? Allow people to have free speech. I'm like, fuck the fuck off.
Well, what do you think about like Bill O'Reilly saying like you can't question the official story of 9/11 because of the victim? You're offending the victims' families. Like, don't you think?
I have no problem with people questioning that, but if I have people who say 9/11 didn't happen, they could fuck right off, right? People didn't die.
Well, if you have somebody that says 9/11 didn't happen, then they've got some serious mental cognition problems. Because I've been to the actual memorial at 9/11. The buildings aren't there anymore.
They're out there. I know. No, if you want to question the official story, whatever. I think you're delusional, but whatever. I don't. It is what it is.
Why do you think it's delusional to question the official story? Like
math, the physics, and everything else. It actually, it's been a dead issue for however long. I mean, most people around nowadays were kids when that happened.
But that's like those are like the stupid talking points. Is like, you know, what temperature does the steel melt? Like that's nonsense crap. Like, but there's legitimate questions surrounding, like, point towards our government at least having foreknowledge of it happening.
No, I've looked into that years back. I mean, I loose change bullshit. Yeah, I remember back in the day because 9/11 was a big thing, and I, you know, was just like anybody else. I wanted to investigate. I didn't find foreknowledge. Just, I mean, what they found was there was some chatter, which was mixed in with a bunch of other chatter. There was no actual credible threat at the time, mixed in with a whole bunch of other shit. And so, do I think that our government had anything to do with it? Fuck no. But if someone wants to believe that, whatever, that's their prerogative.
I mean,
but for somebody to say that didn't happen, no, I don't play that.
Worst case scenario, you could say is someone dropped the ball, not like you could go out and make.
Well,
oh, they intentionally did this.
That
I think no, because we have the plan for the project for the new American century, where they outlined like the countries they wanted to invade, and they said in that document that they wanted a new Pearl Harbor event to get the American public support for 9/11. When they get into power, they get their new Pearl Harbor event and they get their wars in Iraq. So I mean, I think if you look at like who has the motive to do it, it's obviously the people that were in the Bush administration.
What did we get out of Iraq? I mean, I don't. Again, I just think all those fucking things are so tentatively juxtaposition to make things fit the conspiratorial view rather than you know, objectively type looking at it. And you know,
this may not actually. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to say that, look, again, if people want to talk about the conspiracy stuff, that's fine. But most of these people don't have the fucking information they think they have. You don't have high level clearance. You're not in those meetings. You know fucking shit all as compared to anybody else that just reads the fucking what they find off the internet, right? I mean, this opinion that people have that they have some conspiratorial gnostic knowledge that the average Joe Schmuckatelli doesn't have. I think that's a wanting to feel special. That's what I think it is.
Could you say the same thing about like you and your science knowledge?
Anybody can go study science.
Yeah, but it's like
right?
you have this special, you have this like special knowledge that other people don't have, and it makes you feel special.
Special knowledge. No, science is not special knowledge. Science is not special knowledge. Anybody can go fucking read science and understand it. Conspiracy say, look, I have special knowledge. We didn't go to the moon. No, you don't. No, you don't. All right, I gotta get something out of the oven. Be right back.
Patiently await.
I mean, there's a lot of nonsense conspiracy people, but then there's people like you had on Jay Dyer, who he can justify all of his beliefs with books that the conspirators write themselves.
But here's the thing, though. You can write 1,000 different conspiracies at once, and then if you find evidence for one, you've found evidence for something that happened. Nothing that's actually stuck. I mean, you've tried, and then you finally hit one. You know, it's like firing a gun and then, eventually I'll hit something.
I guess I have a hard time believing that the government was involved with 9/11 or knew everything that was going to happen. You know, I was on the USS Sacramento going through the Strait of Hormuz when 9/11 happened. We watched it live on our ship going, okay, we're 12 miles away from Iran. What does this mean? The order immediately came down after the second building fell. We went radio silent. We had all of our boilers lit off already, which is standard procedure going into the Gulf. But we went from 13 knots straight up to 32 knots. And we didn't stop and we didn't respond to anybody, which is unusual. We normally respond to all queries. And we went into UAE, went into Dubai, got fuel, and immediately left the Gulf. the sheer amount of chaos and confusion in our own battle group about what was going on and what we were supposed to be doing, because we got nothing. It was just blank, nothing. Nobody knew what to do. And so everybody left the Gulf, and we just kind of hovered around outside waiting to figure out what was going on. It took 2 weeks before we had any kind of coherent plan. And then we started bombing the hell out of Afghanistan. So
I couldn't imagine that. I mean, I was in the Straits too, but way before you. I was over there in 1989, 1990, 1991, 92, 93. Pretty much, I spent three tours over there: Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and yeah, it's not fun over there. By the way, I mean, I actually enjoyed the UAE. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it wasn't like it's like that horrible to be over there, but when you're out at sea for 30 days to 45 days or whatever at a time, it's pretty miserable. It's pretty miserable. It's hot. Sea snakes everywhere.
Oh yeah, everywhere. Although I have to say, the very first deployment, we went into the Gulf and we stayed in there. That was utterly miserable. I mean, when the deck of your flight deck is 145 degrees, and they're like, literally, people are going down there with their little cameras, taking pictures of people cooking eggs on our flight deck. Yeah, that's miserable. When 9/11 happened, we left. Yeah, when 9/11 happened, we left the Gulf, and they sent the DDGs in to do commerce interdiction and patrolling, and to enforce sanctions and all that happy fun stuff. The rest of the battle group, about a month after 9/11, we had. Just before the Enterprise battle group left, I feel sorry for them because they got called back. We relieved them. They were called back after that. We had 3 full battle groups, 2 ARGs. There were 5 submarines somewhere out there. Who knows? And we had the forward attack response group from Yokosuka, Japan. And the Kitty Hawk was there, and she was loaded with Army helicopters. And was classified. We weren't allowed to take pictures because I was on the Sacramento. It's a refueling ship, a supply ship. So we saw every one of these ships because they had to get fuel, and we're the ones that gave them fuel. So the massive amount of naval presence in the North Arabian Sea, and we stayed in the North Arabian Sea. They sent the DDGs in to do the commerce enforcement, and that was it. Everybody else was outside. It was, and just the chaos. I mean, you get 3 battle groups, a forward deployed unit, and 2 amphibious assault groups, 5 SSBNs. Those were the only ships we didn't see, were the SSBNs. The 2 fast attack submarines we saw frequently because we actually would give them supplies because nobody went to port. None of us could go to port. We would go in and get fuel. We weren't allowed to leave the ship. The entire ship was on lockdown. All of our 50 cal mounts were manned the entire time we were there. I mean, it was crazy. A lot cooler, though, as far as temperature. North Arabian Sea is far cooler. Oh, yeah, it was, none of the other ships went to, we had 2 or 3. We were there, the Bridge was there, and the Detroit were there. Those were the 3 supply ships. There's a supply ship with each of the battle groups, and those are the only 3 ships that actually went to port. Everybody else had to stay out. For 180 days straight, we were at sea.
I don't miss those days. By the way, I'm going to be eating, so I'm going to be muting my mic, but I'm going to be listening because this is really entertaining, and I'm fascinated by naval stories like that because obviously being in the military, and
you're not going to give us some You're not going to give us some ASMR?
No, that's only at night when I got to be really, really quiet, which probably been about an hour. But I'm going to eat first, but I will be listening.
Yeah, I mean, it's just people talk about, the government must have known, and the only thing I can say is, well, if the government knew, then they did a really shitty job about getting into the wartime effort because it was a clusterfuck. I mean, nobody knew what was going on. Nobody knew what was going to happen. They called the Enterprise battle group back, and they hung around with their thumb up their ass going, we don't know what to do. So we're sitting out there doing, 3 knots inside of a 5-mile box, and that's really freaking annoying. You know, well, I don't know how many holes I wore in our damn charts because I had to erase our position and update it every 30 minutes. You know, well, when you're inside of a 5-mile box, well, you erase that whole part of the chart right off. But yeah, it was a huge clusterfuck. So, I mean, I've never really ascribed competency to the government in most anything, but they should have at least had some sort of something, at least somewhat ready to go for that kind of situation. You know, we shouldn't have gotten so many different contradictory orders on what we were supposed to do. You know, one day we do this, the next day we'd be doing the exact opposite, and you're like, well, what is the point of this? And of course, we're watching CNN. It's the only live TV channel that we have. Looking at all of the speculation come in. You know, we had, I don't know how many people. I think our ship had 3 people that had family members that lived in New York City. You know, so we had family members of people trying desperately to get through on the sat phones to their family to find out if they were personally affected by anybody dying. You know, I mean, the whole thing was just a mess. And it ended with lots and lots of Tomahawk cruise missiles and Hellfire missiles. And please don't ask me how many crates of Hellfire missiles went to the bottom of the ocean, because there were a lot of them. Those are expensive oops.
Half the stuff the government does are pretty expensive oops, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, we had 2 aircraft off the Carl Vinson battle group, which is the one I was in at the time. 2 aircraft went off the end of the aircraft carrier. They missed the cable. They didn't throttle up when they hit the deck, so their planes just went right off the end. They had to eject. One pilot was seriously injured, was medevaced back out to Japan. The other one was fine. He ejected, and they just went and picked him up. So we lost 2 planes on our battle group. We dumped somewhere in the neighborhood of about a dozen crates of Hellfire missiles. Each Hellfire missile is 120,000 pounds. Each crate has 8 missiles in it. And, you know, because we're doing vertical replenishment, so we're using our helicopters off our flight deck, and they run the crates out. The helicopters come in, they hover it up, they hook the netting to it, and they hook it to the bottom of the helicopter. It takes off and flies it over to the, you know, to the ship next to us, usually the aircraft carriers for the missiles. You know, and they're 120 feet off of the side of our ship. And we usually have the aircraft carrier in underway replenishment detail, the guide ship, the ship that's not supposed to change course. It goes in one direction the entire time and doesn't change course. And then you have ships that come up each side of the unrep ship, and that they have to make their course changes, because the closer you get a Venturi effect, which will actually, if you get too close, it'll suck the 2 ships together. And the only way to get them apart is to come to an almost complete stop. And then you have to try and pry each other apart. It's a nasty thing. Plus all the damage of just 2 ships colliding that forcefully. Well, when the aircraft carrier comes alongside, they're the guide, because they're launching aircraft, launching and recovering aircraft. So we'll have the aircraft carrier on one side, then we'll have us in the middle, and then we have all the small boys, all the DDGs, the cruisers. You know, at one point we actually had the one of the LHAs come up alongside of us, and they're almost as big as a freaking aircraft carrier. So, and they're 120 feet off the sides of the ship, and we run fuel lines across to them. We have cables that run crates across, but most of the stuff is done like dry goods, foods, missiles, those kinds of things. It's just more efficient and faster to do it with the helicopters. And we'll usually have 2 helicopters running, and they're just leapfrogging each other. The problem is that helicopters have problems with airflow, and especially when the aircraft carriers are launching aircraft. So if they get a bad pick on a crate and it starts spinning, well, they've got to dump it, or it's going to bring the aircraft or the LHA down, or the SH-64 down, and that's a bad thing. You don't want to crash the helicopter. So they dump the cargo, and it goes into the ocean, and usually it sinks pretty quickly. If it's something that floats, we can try and pick it back up, but we usually don't. So yeah, it gets pretty expensive. So when people look at the budget for the military and they're like, my God, we spend so much money, and it's like, if you only knew the amount of money that's wasted.
I was, by the way, I was in the Carl Vincent group as well. And I never had really actually do vert reps because I was a nuke, obviously, and we don't do the vert reps. But I can tell you from the cost of shit, it's always easier to fabricate stuff, right? Especially when you're qualified propulsion craftsman, which I was. You have to make your own shit like O-rings and flange. You have to machine your own flanges. You got to do all kinds of your own shit. But these gaskets that if you couldn't make your own, they would run like $60 for something that you can get at 32 cents at a store. It was ridiculous how much markup they were on. That if you actually couldn't fabricate, should be something huge amount. You've had to fabricate your own shit quite a few times, though.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the amount of money when you look at that, and you look at the amount of fuel. We hated going 13 knots. That's the speed we always wanted to go because it was the most efficient speed that our ship could move at. That's where we burned the least amount of fuel, and that's also the speed that we would replenish at. With rare exceptions, we did do a 130-degree turn while replenishing. 120 feet off the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier had a bunch of aircraft that had been flying around, and they had to land. They didn't have a choice. Well, the wind was in the wrong direction. They had to turn 130 degrees. Well, we're also giving them fuel. They decided that instead of breaking apart, letting the aircraft carrier turn, do its aircraft recovery, it was going to take a couple of hours to do that. That they decided they were going to shift all three ships that were replenishing through a 130-degree turn so that they could start recovering aircraft. And in the middle of the turn, one of the fueling lines came unseated, and talk about an explosion of jet fuel. I always laugh when people start talking about how explosive jet fuel is, and it's like, no, it's diesel fuel. It's not very explosive at all. But the amount of...
It's kerosene-based. JP5 you're talking about? Yeah, JP5 is kerosene-based, yeah.
And it's just ridiculous. And then DFM, that's what our ship ran off of. That's what all the gas turbine engines run off of. Obviously the aircraft... Well, the Carl Vincent was annoying because the Carl Vincent is not nuclear powered. No, not the Carl Vincent, the Constellation. That was the first battle group was the Constellation. It was, I believe, the last deployment of the Constellation. And that is super, super annoying. I don't ever want to get stuck with a conventional aircraft carrier ever again. Every single day we had to see that damn ship. Our entire life involved following the damn aircraft carrier around.
Yeah, I mean, clearly reactors are much better. I don't remember what they have on the Carl Vincent. I don't know. I mean, I thought the Enterprise was an A5W system, but I could be wrong on that. And my hands are greasy, so I can't really type this out. But if anyone looks it up, find out the reactors.
Yeah, the Enterprise is unique. It's a class of its own. The Carl Vincent was a Constellation, not a Constellation class. What was the Nimitz class? So whatever the Nimitz had is what the Carl Vincent has. Yeah, I don't remember. I know we were happy when we went with it because we were originally going to go with the Lincoln because they're based out of the Carl Vincent was based out of San Diego at that time, and the Lincoln's was based out of Everett. But the Lincoln actually hit us in the very first deployment that we went into, and it was ruled our fault, even though we're not the ones that we didn't turn. The Lincoln turned.
Obviously, the Enterprise reactors are fusion reactors to push a starship.
Clearly, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Through warp speed, upwards of
matter-antimatter reaction.
Yes.
As you disclosed top secret information.
Although I will say, if you look up Jane's, what they list the Nimitz class aircraft carriers at being able to do, 35 knots or something like that. And our ship was a battleship. When they scrapped the battleship program, there were 4 battleships that were built up to essentially the main deck level. The power plants were in, everything below decks was in. They scrapped the program, and so they have 4 battleships sitting in dry dock. So they had the wonderful idea that they were going to get rid of their tenders, and they were going to make one fast combat support ship to deploy with the fleets. And that's how the AOEs were born. So the first 4 AOEs, which were, I believe, the Seattle, the Detroit, the Sacramento, and I cannot for the life of me remember what the last one was, were all started life as battleships. And if you actually get pictures of them from above, they have the same silhouette shape to the hull as a battleship. So they just kind of gutted them a bit. They, widened them, deepened them, but we still had the same outer hull, which was 6 inches of solid steel. So our outer hulls are 6 inches thick, and they still had the battleship boilers in them. And then they just fitted them to haul, 9.3 million gallons of fuel in their holds. So Jane's lists our top speed, I believe, at like 28 or 30. We can do 35 over ground.
Secret. Hope they're going to come after you.
Oh, yeah, they're going to come after me. The Enterprise, during just random plain old maneuvers down off the coast of San Diego, we're running at 30 knots. The Enterprise in the morning was on the horizon behind us. This is another reason why it irritates the hell out of me with, I did navigation. Navigation doesn't work on a flat Earth. I mean, we have to make the computations based off of a round Earth.
I'm going to trigger someone now.
I know. There's a reason we have there's a reason we have Mercator projection charts, and it's not to uphold some vast conspiracy. But anyway, in the morning, they were on the horizon behind us. So they were about 17 miles behind us, because it's about how far we could see. And by that night, they were on the horizon in front of us. And when they passed us, they were hauling ass. So I'm going to just hazard a guess that James is a little inaccurate on the speed of the nuclear aircraft carriers. And when you think those are like 33-story tall buildings come roaring past you, like you're standing still, and you're like, holy hell. No, we don't stop.
Actually has two is A4W reactors, and that means aircraft 4th generation Westinghouse. The 2 reactor systems I worked on, I was on qualified supervisor for S1C, which was submarine 1st generation combustion engineering, and a D2G, which was destroyer class 2nd generation General Electric. But somebody in live chat just said, Stargazer said that he was a fire control tech, and he said he learned more about troubleshooting shit in the Navy than anywhere else. And I agree. Look at when you go through the military, and back me up here, Sandring, one of the things they expect is your ability to reason, be a critical thinker, think on your own, think fast on your feet, and not be a dipshit. If you can't make those things, don't make your ability or something. But for the most part, you have to have the ability to think and reason. Any of these fucking flat earthers would survive a minute in the military. Do you?
Well, they probably wouldn't be getting in, because I'm guessing most of them wouldn't pass the drug test.
Well, it's not even so much that. The military has a prohibition against allowing anybody into the military with an IQ less than 83. It's because the military has they've determined
there's this whole ASVAB they have to pass.
Yeah, and if a 24 on the ASVAB is what you have to get in order to get into the Navy, period, or at least it was when I was.
You could breathe.
That's an 83 IQ. Yeah, if you get a 24 on the ASVAB, that is an 83 IQ.
If you don't mind, what was your FQT, or do
my IQ?
Oh, your AFQT on the ASVAB?
74.
It's about average, right?
Well, 63 was what was required to get into the nuclear program, and that was the highest threshold that they had.
60, is it 63? It's a little bit higher, but yeah, that's about right. But anybody want to guess what I got?
Well, it only goes to 99, so
I'm guessing a 65, just because you're asking.
No, I got a 99, and 99, and not to brag, but I am going to brag. That is fucking hard to do. That's my recruiter had been doing this for years. He's only seen either one other person get a perfect score. And of course, I went nuke, which was the highest possible thing you can get into. There is nothing more demanding
Right.
as far as programs are. I mean, that's designed by MIT. I mean, the fucking course is hard. But yeah, I mean, it's not easy to get a 99 on the AFQT, but anything over 60 is considered to be, you know, decent enough for most things. If you get a 24, you're a fucking rock.
Well, yeah, and they realize, or their reasoning is that once you get below that, you cannot be effectively trained to do anything that would be productive. You would actually be counterproductive. So they won't allow you in. You know, and then in the actual, when you're actually in your rate doing your job, yeah, you're expected to be able to think through your problems and problem solving. When you get to stupid bureaucratic things like, you know, monthly planned maintenance, they can be insanely. They write every little thing down, every single little step. Okay, first you're, you know, cleaning a telescopic alidade. You know, first thing, twist the 2 knobs. You know, 3 turns to the left to unlock the alidade from the repeater. Lift it from the repeater, being careful not to drop it on the face of the repeater. And it's, you read through these things, and you're like, okay, this was obviously written for somebody with an ASVAB of 24.
Yeah.
But
kidding. When you do preventative maintenance and you're reading these things, they are written pedantic. I mean, to the point is, okay, open cover 3 inches, move to the side. It's just ridiculous. I mean, I understand why they need to do it. But it is written like you're a child.
It is. But when you're actually doing your job, you know, you're expected to know your job and do it. And, you know, interesting story how I got into navigation, because I actually went into the Navy undesignated, and I am so glad that the guy at boot camp said that I'm not letting you do that. I wanted to be a master at arms, and that's what I wanted. You had to be a petty officer at the time in '98 in order to become a master at arms. So you couldn't go, there wasn't an A school for it. You couldn't get it just by joining up. You had to be a petty officer. So you could only strike into it or cross class into it, cross rate into it. So I was like, they first offered me advanced electronics field because that's what they needed the most of. There was a $9,000 sign-in bonus. I didn't think I was going to like the Navy very much, and I didn't like the 6-year commitment that came with it. And I really wanted to be a master at arms. So I declined that, went in undesignated, and with hopes of being able to strike into master at arms. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I went in as a E3. So I'm thinking, you know, this shouldn't be too awfully hard, 6 months, whatever, out in the fleet, doing whatever, and I should be able to strike into master at arms. I went through boot camp, and in, I think, the 7th week of boot camp, they review all of your paperwork and all of the guarantees that you were given, make sure everything's in order. And for anybody who's undesignated, who didn't score high enough on their ASVAB to actually qualify for a rate, during this week, they try and place you in a rate. See if there's, you know, if there's an undermanned rate and you have the requisite qualifications to be able to be put into that rate, they put you into it. And when I went through there, he's like, I'm sorry, I see you're undesignated. And I was like, yeah, I'm hoping to be a master at arms. And he's like, well, you know, you've got a 74 ASVAB score, and we have 16 rates that are severely undermanned. I can't let you go into the fleet undesignated. Here are the 16 undermanned rates. Pick one, or I'm picking one for you. So I got to sit there and read through them all. And of course, they give you these little cards that trying to describe what each rate does. And they give you the most glorifying things about each rate, and don't bother to tell you the horrible, nasty things that each of those rates have to deal with as well.
Welcome to Nuke
So you don't get a
exactly.
Yeah, you don't really get, you don't get a clear picture of what you're really going to be doing. But navigation always interested me. I loved celestial navigation. I loved learning about the sun, moon, and stars. So I picked that one, and I got to learn how to navigate by the sun, moon, and stars. I got to use a sextant, and every year we ran a test between all of the people in our workup groups, whose quartermasters were the best with celestial navigation. They would shut down. CIC would keep an electronic log of where we were, which I thought was frightening because I never knew an OS that could navigate their way out of a wet paper bag. But they kept an electronic log in CIC of where we were. They used the GPS and WRN6. And then we could only use the sun, moon, and stars, which we didn't do. We didn't get a lot of practice being in the Pacific Northwest to do this. But once we got out down off the coast of San Diego, we had clear skies almost all the time. So, we would actually go for 3 full days doing nothing but celestial navigation. And then we would see how close the quartermaster's plots were on all the different ships to see how accurately we had done it. And the first year that I was there, I think we were something like 23 miles off. And the last year we did it, I was half a mile from where we actually were. And that's about I think that was a lot of luck because, yeah, you use sextant. Yep.
So let me ask you this. Wanted to actually demonstrate flat Earth is a thing. Has any one of them ever tried using a sextant on a flat Earth model?
Well, depends upon how deep you want. I've never heard of them doing it. It would depend upon how deep you want to get into it, because they make publications. HO 229 lists all of the star declinations for your navigable stars. And if they went no further than just simply using the official, the Nautical Almanac and Pub 229 to compute their location, it wouldn't matter if you were on a flat Earth or on a round Earth. But in order to get the, as far as the math would work either way, but there's a whole bunch of math involved in getting the numbers for the declination of the stars. And that math requires a round Earth. So if it was flat Earth versus a round Earth, you would come up with very different numbers for that. And then when you try to plot your course using the 2 different numbers, you would end up in wildly different locations. So it depends upon how deep you want to go into it. If you just accept...
If you're just going off the declination that's already there, it's not going to make a difference. You're going to end up where you're going to end up. But arriving at those positions, a spherical, celestial sphere is going to be vastly different than what you would find from a flat, whatever sphere.
Correct. Yeah, and if the Earth was indeed flat, we would not have any need for SHA, sidereal hour angle. We wouldn't care. We wouldn't care about when the first point of Aries happens. It just wouldn't matter.
I'm a little curious how they would even stand to be able to do something like the Green Beret training, where you're purely on foot trying to dodge professional Green Berets and navigate only by the stars.
Yeah, the cool thing is navigation. Celestial navigation works regardless of whether you're on the surface of the Earth or on the land or in the ocean. Mm-hmm. The ocean is easier because you have you don't have to worry about elevation. But on land base, they have bubble sextants to bring, and you have to use an altimeter to figure out how high in the atmosphere you are, so that you can set the bubble correctly, so that you're actually bringing the star down to what the horizon would be without land masses in the way.
And
so on the,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, it's just on the ocean. You don't have any of that problem. I know exactly how high I am. I'm 72 feet above the surface of the ocean when I'm up on the signal bridge. So, and I have to take that 72 feet into account in my calculations. You're out, how high you are, affects how far it is to the visual horizon. So I actually have to correct for that 72 feet. And also using a statometer, I have to know what my height is as well. But a statometer would neither prove nor disprove a flat Earth. It just proves distances.
And we need to have more conversations with flat earthers, by the way. And we have a fire technician in the live chat. I think it was an FC2 that could probably tell you that for missile systems, you have the Coriolis effect that you have to worry about over long distance. But did you ever have to take that into account for anything, the Coriolis effect?
No, not really. When we generally, for expedience sake, I had a huge interest in celestial navigation, and that's the only reason that I learned so much about it. Most quartermasters, especially, recently they just merged a bunch of rates, and I believe that they combined quartermasters, I know they combined quartermasters and signalmen together. And They were just quartermasters, but they were also talking about folding quartermasters into boatswain's mates and then just using quad designators for which portion of the three you were going to be, which would be really sad because quartermaster is, well, quartermasters and boatswain's mates argue with each other over which rate is actually older. I still think quartermasters, navigation is the oldest before they actually had boatswain's mates. But I don't know. They just don't really teach it anymore because of the electronics that we have today. I mean, 99.9% of the navigation I did was all off of GPS and using charts. But again, there's no point to having, Mercator projection charts if the Earth is flat. And we don't actually navigate. Yeah, and we don't actually navigate on Mercator projection charts or nomadic projection charts. I'm sorry. We navigate on Mercator projection charts, which is a flat representation. The problem with them is that the bigger area they show, the more distortion there is. And, we can prove this by, scaling the maps or the charts. So we can get a large scale chart where we're doing voyage planning, and that's generally all it is. We're going across the ocean. So there's, we have charts that show huge swaths of the ocean. And I can put next to it smaller Mercator projection charts that cover a much smaller area. And I can plot our position with GPS straight across, and I can show a huge difference by the time you get to the end because of the distortion on larger Mercator projection charts. And then you can't even navigate technically off of nomadic projection charts. Nomadic projection charts don't use the poles and the equator as their reference points. They use randomly picked points on the Earth, and they say, okay, this is our point of reference, and we're going to spread the chart out around that point and then flatten it out. So there would be no point to nomadic projection charts at all if the Earth was flat.
Yeah, you wouldn't need it because they're just trying to represent a three-dimensional sphere on a two-dimensional plane. But it's funny is you're smart. You would recognize in your rate if the word was flat. I mean, you would notice it as a cue more than anything. So how many people out there do they think are into this conspiracy? Like, they think you're paid to fucking just cover it all up? I mean, that's when it gets into the world of delusion, right? Because they take rational people like yourself and go, oh, either A, you're lying, or, you just weren't, you weren't woke enough or something. By the way, Scott, you're unmuted. You were service muted.
I just had one question for you there when you were talking about you weren't using GPS too much anymore.
Oh, no, we are. That's about all we use.
Sorry, you were using that almost exclusively now. Excuse me.
Yes.
I'm surprised that they're having you use that so much since it's become so relevant this day and age to start spoofing GPS signals for, stuff like Pokemon Go and all that.
You can't, not with the ANWRN6. There's an encrypted side to the GPS satellites. So we use the GPS, right? Yeah. It's all the same GPS satellites, but there's an actual encryption side for military use in all of the GPS satellites. And you have to have an actual encryption device. It's classified and it's part of our, we must remove and destroy if we abandon ship protocol. So we actually have to pull the drive out of the ANWRN6 and we have to smash it up before we jump off the ship. Because it's an encryption code, and we have to wait for the OSs to come out and give us the new encryption for it. So if they don't decide to do that, then we have just civilian grade GPS, which the civilian grade has gotten to the point where it's pretty much equally as accurate as military, except that you cannot interfere with military. You're not going to be able to spoof that. You're not going to be able to affect an ANWRN6.
Okay. I had to learn the civilian stuff for programming, and I was like, oh, well, this is pretty damn easy to spoof. I didn't do anything military grade, of course.
Now we do have civilian GPS units as well, and we have two separate ANWRN6s that are, talking to the satellites, receiving the information from the satellites directly, and they're receiving the encrypted stream. And that's what we actually use to navigate. And then we, we'll look at like the CO had his own computer that had a commercial navigation program on it, so he could sit at his chair, then just look at his computer screen, and it shows a whole chart and everything where he's at, and he can do all sorts of cool things with it. Of course, he never actually learns how to use it, so he ends up coming over and asking us to do stuff for him on his computer. Like if we have an operational box, he wants us to draw the operational box on his computer chart so that he can see where we are inside the operational box.
I mean, they haven't gotten to the point where you can't just swipe left and send it over to his screen yet?
Well, yes, they do.
Oh.
However,
smart ass.
However, no, they actually have one. They've got an entire chart. Well, it's a chart table, and it's a high-tech chart table. It actually projects the image straight up onto a glass top, and you take your little grease pen and you can mark straight on it instead of having a paper chart. And bonus, the thing will act, and the really nice thing is when you get in, it's got a barcode scanner, and so when you get the aids to navigation updates, you can scan the barcode and it connects to the internet and it downloads all of the changes, because we have to correct charts because ships sink and they find more information or they change lights. I spent hours and hours and hours just updating charts from different changes. Well, this thing, you just swipe the barcode on the nautical updates and it updates your charts for you. And then you can also print any chart at any scale that you want, either Mercator or projection, and you can shunt that right out. It's got a big printer on it, prints them all in fairly standardized sizes, which is nice because if you order them online or you go through the military provider, which you can do, you can't get the classified charts, but you can get all of the regular civilian charts. They all come in different sizes, and it's really annoying. I really wish they'd just stick to one standard size for them all. The problem is that we can't have them, or we couldn't have them, because they're dependent upon electricity. We're required to keep charts of the entire world in our chart room on paper.
Backup kind of thing?
No, as our primary use, because electricity fails. We're a warship.
That is a backup, right?
Yeah. So we have
navigational charts are going to be on hand. Sure.
Yeah. So we have all of the and there's certain charts that I have to keep updated at all times, and those are our common use areas. Like for me, it would be the Puget Sound and San Diego. So those two harbors, I have to I had to keep up to date every single time we got a new correction. I had to go through and see if any of them affected any of our ready charts, and then I had to go correct all of our ready charts. And then because of how much OSs suck at navigation, I don't know why I guess I do. They're the electronic specialists as far as, I don't know. They're supposed to keep a secondary backup navigation plot in CIC, and they suck at it. So I got really sick and tired of arguing with OSs over corrections. So I eventually, and I think they did it on purpose just to get out of having to correct charts. So I would actually lay all 4 charts out, and I would make each correction to all 4 charts at the same time. Because once I've determined the location of where the correction actually is, well, I know exactly where it is on all 4 charts now. So it's easier for me to just correct all 4 of the charts and give them 2 of them, and I have 2 of them. And then we know that all of our charts match. And since this is my full-time job, whereas it's just kind of a half-assed part-time job for the OSs, I'm a hell of a lot better at it. So I ended up having to take on their duties just because it was less heartache for me, because if I corrected charts, then I had to wait for them to get around to correcting their charts. Then we had to compare all of the corrections and make sure that we came to the same conclusion. And theoretically, it would be better because maybe I made a mistake and they didn't. I don't think I ever actually encountered that problem, but it is possible. So having 2 different people plot the same correction and then, comparing them, it's supposed to be a safety check to make sure that we indeed got the thing in the right place. But it became such a huge hassle that I just said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Real quick, we definitely have double, triple redundancy in the military. A couple things. One, whoever joined us under Droid, you're on server muted. I don't know what the fuck is going on in the stream chat, by the way. You guys playing with Mr. ID? And does anybody know how to go make a Mr. ID page on Encyclopedia Dramatica? Because if you do, go do it. He needs one, so people could be warned about him, because he's earned. I think he's earned it. But by the way, thanks, Jim. We got Jim in the live chat right now from Atheist Edge, one of my mods actually. He what did you just? You just made something too, Jim? Didn't you just made a milestone of something? He wanted to thank, he would congratulate me on this particular channel. If you guys don't know, made the top 40 YouTube quote. You guys are gonna shit on this, but atheist channels, yeah, whatever.
Oh my God, atheist channels.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm actually, it made the top 40 this month, along with Logic, Apologia, Atheist Edge. You made it, didn't you? I know Atheist Republic did. Oh, yeah, let's see what else. But anyways, so that was weird. That I made an atheist take it, so.
Oh, something I wanted to touch on too is he said I talked to nobody talk to.
No, I like the way you talk. I'm not even bullshitting you. You have a good methodical pace. You're easy to understand. You don't need to change shit, so he can fuck off and die. Okay.
Yeah, he was rushing through a lot of what he was saying. I mean, it was like listening to Ben Shapiro if we were in reverse world, where everything that came out of his mouth was just wrong. Holy crap!
Yeah, literally everything that came out of his mouth was. I think toward the end he said something that I did agree with. He did. I am a monkey, and we do live on a spinning ball. So that is true. So congratulations.
A great ape. You're a great ape.
I'm a monkey.
I mean,
but great ape sounds so much better.
If you guys have not gone over to subscribe to Atheist Edge, please go over and subscribe to Atheist Edge. They need it.
Man, I subscribed to Mr. Atheist last night, and it's like I almost walked in on his stream and this stream at the same time.
He was streaming. I was over there for a little while. He had like 20 some odd people. I like Mr. Atheist. He's a great guy, actually. Good channel.
Well, he was over there talking to Kyle.
I was listening while
I was over there for a little while.
I have headphones where I basically I'll listen to two things at once. I don't know how my brain can do it, but I've done it.
I used to be able to do that, but then I learned how to do 5 or 6, and I forgot how to do the rest.
Yeah. So Dave, what is our favorite Mr. Intelligent Design babbling about now, if I can ask? Not to get away from this flat Earth stuff, but just curious.
Oh, just
the Inside Chat, but people have been going, "What the fuck is the Inside Chat doing?"
Hello, Edgar.
Talking about stuff he always tries to talk about. In other words, I have no the real intelligence.
I can tell you, it'll be about squeeze-ons and snooze-ons.
I just looked up there, and it says if you support evolution, you support religious idea. Okay.
Well, here's going to be. You know what we shall do. You know what we shall do from here on out. Look at, and again, just a suggestions. I have no clout among you people, but when people throw out shit like that, walk away and just say, you know what, you ain't got nothing to offer in a conversation. If you are that fucking stupid to think that evolution doesn't actually happen, you're not even worth my time to engage or initiate engagement in a conversation. Shun them. I don't. There's no reason to fucking waste your time with people that goddamn dumb. If you find people that are a little more educated, I don't mind the really in-depth intelligent design conversations, right? They're a little more complexity. I get that. But if you're at that level where you just say evolution is a religion, evolution is stupid, whatever, walk away with them. They're just not even you have to parse out your time. And I've been doing that, and I tell you, I haven't been happier since, because I was just in the Atheist Experience channel forum on Facebook the other day, and I had a couple posts on it that I did from some blogs, and most people liked it. I had a few people who did that clearly didn't read what I wrote, right? Clearly didn't read. But even some of the people I noted, they say, "Hey, well, Steve, why are they strawmanning you? I read what you wrote. It makes sense. It's actually pretty informative." But I had this one guy didn't grasp what I was saying. He was such at a level that he didn't even know what the fuck knowledge and belief was in philosophy, and he didn't want to learn. You know what? I don't mean to disrespect, but I have many other people that I can have a conversation with that actually want to talk about this topic. I don't have time for this level. Of course, you know, it's not trying to sound elitist, you know, by any means, because I'm fucking nowhere near half the fucking people in this community. But it's a time element. It's not because you're smarter. It's not because you know more. It's because you have a limited amount of time, and why waste it on fuckery? That's my position from here on out.
Well, that's a good position. No, I don't. Well, I've kind of felt that way halfway through, you know, tonight's live stream, where, you know, just listening to his responses, I was done. I'm like, okay, there is nothing that you're going to say to him that he's not simply going to dismiss and then keep on his own talking points.
Who are we talking
he's
about?
not willing.
That was supposed. They're kind of shit shows. Let's be realistic. We have all kinds of shows on Non-Sequitur, and it's designed that way. That's kind of why I spend a lot of time mapping out, you know, what's going to be happening, and these things are by design. Now, granted, we don't go in with any kind of expectations or shit. None of this is scripted.
It's entertaining. It's certainly entertaining, but
freestyle.
You know, halfway through, it's nope. He's not gonna. There's nothing that you can say that's going to convince him. You're not going to change his mind, because he's clearly simply dismissing the things that you have to say.
Are we talking about the guy who was denying 9/11, or was saying that it was a conspiracy?
No.
Well, more than that, Russ thinks that conspiracy theory he doesn't like. You know.
What was it? 23 different conspiracies that he mentioned.
Yeah.
No, when it comes to the flat Earth people, you know, just having such an extensive background in navigation, oceanic navigation, everything that we do has that base assumption that the Earth is round. And I don't understand. I couldn't even wrap my mind around the kind of conspiracy you would have to put out all of the nomadic projection charts. The simple fact that I can prove discrepancies in position just based off of the scale of the Mercator projection chart, which is the most inaccurate chart you have, because it takes everything and makes it flat based off the equator. So the farther north you get, the worse the distortion gets as well. You know, I mean, that I can prove.
It's depending on your latitude, the amount of distortion. Correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yes. The farther north you go, the more distortion there is, and the smaller projection you should use. You know, and we wouldn't bother doing voyage planning with nomadic projection charts and then transferring those over to our Mercator projection charts, because the shortest distance between two places is not a straight line across the ocean, because the Earth is curved. So you actually take a curved route, because that's the shortest, and we care about how much fuel we're burning, and we care about timetables. We would never get anywhere in the Navy if the Earth was actually flat.
Yeah, it wouldn't work, people. We know from experience. Like I said, you know, we're not just paid shills. We were actually in the military. We actually were on actual ships that sailed on actual oceans.
And I've watched aircraft carriers disappear through our big eyes. Now, we have binoculars on our ship that are big enough to see the moons of Jupiter, or powerful enough to see the moons of Jupiter. Now, I've seen them. You can see 3 of them.
Actually, you see them. You can see. In fact, what's funny is, it's true. If Jupiter wasn't so bright, you would actually be able to see 4 of the moons of Jupiter with the naked eye. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at planets. I've looked at Mars. You can actually see that it's not just a white or a kind of reddish speck of light. It's an actual sphere. You know, we've got.
They'll admit that. They'll be like, oh, those planets there, they're definitely round, but the Earth, not so much. But when you ask them how physically is that possible, oh, I don't know. Okay.
But we have these, you know, very powerful binoculars for, you know, lookout, so we can look. You know, it's very important that we can see something quickly. It might be a threat. We need to be able to see it as fast as possible. With those, you can watch the aircraft, especially the aircraft carriers, disappear. You can still see the conning tower. You cannot see any other part of the ship.
You don't need a telescope or binoculars, dude. Why do you think people had a crow's nest back in pirate days?
So they could see farther.
Yeah, that's because the Earth was curved. Yeah, because if you're at sea level,
translate Mr. ID. No, I cannot translate Mr. ID. I don't speak that language of fuckery. I'm sorry, I just don't.
They weren't in the crow's nest.
Very few people do. Red Eye can. Red Eye speaks dumb shit. He's fluent in fucking different languages. He's fluent in fuckery. He's fluent in dumb fuckery and bullshittery and assholery. He's got this. He's a polyglot.
I'm working on Ass Hattery at the moment. Ass Hattery's the hard one.
He's so good at it that if he was trolling you, you'd believe him.
He can definitely point out a cunt a mile away.
Who is it? Who's the most influent, or who's the most fluent in Ass Hattery?
I don't know. I'm still debating on who's the best. It's like there's some serious contenders out there. The guy on today's show, for example, it's like there was machine gunning of assertions that was just blowing my fucking mind. And it was using poop ammo, so every time he shot a shot, it didn't matter what he was aiming at, it'd hit something and then splatter and stink the place up.
Visuals are the best.
If only there was a fan out at the time.
Something like that, like in a normal dialogue, right? I mean, I hate giving people like that airtime. I really do, but I understand the need for it. And it is entertaining because if somebody else had RussianVids on with that, I would be watching it, right? I'm not going to front and say that I'm above watching this kind of crap, but it is fucking crap. I'm not going to just be realistic, but that's why I guess makes it entertaining, right? Because he's so goddamn fucking retarded.
There is at least a little bit of educational value in a video like that. One, I did learn from the other side. They made really good points. Some of them I didn't know. It's like, oh, that's cool. And the overarching is to warn you that there are people that make these really dumb assertions and actually believe them. I have a hard time believing that they really believe their own shit, but it's like a dumb person trying to imagine what it would be like to have 150 IQ. And I guess the reverse would be true.
It is it's a public service announcement. I mean, in some ways, right? I mean, I think we're doing a public service. And we try to educate. I know, like, Reg wants to give out information. I at least try to explain stuff, right? I mean, when I have somebody come on and I know they're just full of fuckery, I will try to do my damnedest to explain certain concepts. But with the guy RussianVids, he was having none of it, right? And he just continually wanted to take things down a different direction. And I can't have those kind of conversations.
Yeah, I was surprised. The amount of restraint to keep going with it.
I got any announcements, by the way. I know I'm sure David doesn't want to keep this over too long. He's had a hard day, but I know Apology is in the live chat. He's got a video coming out here soon, I think. If you guys haven't subscribed to Apologia, go subscribe to him. An amazing job. By the way, I sent you a message, Apology. I don't know if you got it. But has anybody got announcements or anything they want to go? And then, like, if Dave feels like he needs to end it, he can. I don't want to feel like he has to keep this open, but I am enjoying this, so keep it open if you can. But if you,
my only announcement is that I have no forthcoming videos because I've never made one.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. It's hard. They're hard. Videos are not easy to make. Not by any stretch of imagination.
There's been a couple of times where I've wanted to make videos, like, why I believe federal welfare is immoral, why the Second Amendment actually matters, and why we need more research and more evidence and more numbers. We need to track statistics a little bit better because so far the numbers seem to support gun ownership. I've thought about making videos like that before,
do it. Why not? Yeah, they are time consuming though.
I'd be happy to see that because I know a lot of politicians think that if there were studies done, it would end up just backfiring on them and show that we should have more control or something like that. It was something weird during Bush's administration. I heard about that.
Yeah, the argument was put forward that the NRA is blocking or always blocks the CDC from actually tracking gun statistics, like in-depth gun violence statistics, gun death statistics, but they do actually track some of these things. And you know, the big one that I'm interested in is, you know, they come back and they're like, originally it was, I think in 2015 it was 33,000, and then I think it jumped to 38,000 for 2016 of total deaths by gun, which is actually a pretty low number when you look at all of the things that kill people prematurely. That's pretty low on the list.
Was that including suicides or?
Yes, that includes suicides. That's all deaths by gun. That's accidental discharge. That's all violence. That's all police-involved shootings, all suicide. I believe in 2016 it was 38,000 people that died. It had gone up a little bit. Prior to that, though, you know, it had been coming down every single year. You know, like the gun homicide rate was cut in half since the mid 90s. But I'm interested in those things. And then one of the things that they put out as well was that guns were used for self-defense somewhere between 50 and 300,000, you know, self-defense uses of a gun in 2016. And there's a huge spread. And the reason that it's a huge spread is because they're not tracking it super well, and there's different criteria that they use for those numbers. Like the 50,000 defensive uses are based off of actual police reports where police responded to the use, and the 300,000 is all self-reporting, saying, you know, and instances where somebody simply showed that they had a gun and it ended the altercation at that point. The other person ran off. So we need a lot better statistics on that and to track that a little bit better. You know, because so far, I mean, if you take, you know, I always throw out suicide. People are going to kill themselves if they're going to kill themselves. Japan is a perfect example of that. So when it comes to gun control, you know, I'm not so interested in the suicide statistics because I believe that is a different topic that needs to be addressed, because that deals seriously with mental health. And the method to use to kill somebody or to kill yourself is kind of irrelevant to me, you know, to the point that somebody would actually try killing themselves. So I take those out, and then that drops. I mean, that's, you know, a huge proportion. It's 60% of the gun deaths are suicide. So at least 40% that are left. And of that 40%, you know, you've got about another 15% that are police-involved shootings. You know, it's police shooting other people or somebody shooting a police officer. You know, so when you get back down to the fact that there's approximately 4,000 homicides with gun that were committed with a gun, and of that, 93% of those were handgun deaths. 7% were rifles, and that's all rifles. So that includes the AR, you know, the much demonized AR, shotguns, bolt-action rifles, lever-action rifles. All rifles only account for 7% of the homicide rate. So if you look at, just take the whole actual homicide rate, and we got to lump the accidental deaths in there as well. I don't count police-involved shootings because you're not going to disarm the police. So if you take the accidental gun deaths and all homicides, and you know, and you end up with a number that's about 4,300 people a year die because of that, and then you're like, well, 50,000 people were saved by their gun, and that's I have to use that one because that's the only one that actually has documentation behind it. So, you know, the risk reward, is this a greater good or a greater evil? You know, and I actually want to know, because I want to hold true beliefs, and I'm a huge proponent of the Second Amendment. I own very specific guns for very specific reasons. You know, I don't have just some big arsenal of guns. I do have an arsenal of ammunition, just because it's cheaper to buy it in case lots of 1,000 than it is to buy a box of 20. But,
I gotta say that I agree with you on pretty much all the points you're making right now, with the one minor contention that you mentioned, the accidental discharge thing. And there's no such thing as an accidental discharge. It's always a negligent discharge. But
correct.
Pretty much,
yes.
But agree with you on the stats.
I would absolutely agree with you at negligent discharge.
Did you guys see the off-duty FBI officer that did the backflip? His gun fell out as he reached for it, picked it up, shot someone in the fucking leg. I just went, oh, welcome to America.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well, YouTube. We're familiar with YouTube, just look at idiots and guns. And I swear to God that that's what people look at. And then they decide, yeah, we need to ban all guns because there's some pretty moronic people with guns out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would be A-okay with the Second Amendment if we actually had a very good education system. And
we used to.
We used to.
Yeah, because anti-gun people started lobbying to get those kinds of things removed. Our high school had an actual gun club where you brought your own gun. You were expected to have your own gun. You brought it to school to go to the shoot meets. You know, well, political correctness, amazingly enough, does manage to make it to Lander, Wyoming eventually. And they finally decided, the federal school board put down guidelines about gun programs in schools. And so ours got cut. And nobody wanted it to be cut, but it got cut. So, they used to actually have the hunter safety course was a part of school. Everybody in school went through hunter safety. No, that got cut too. It's like we used to have a much better education system on guns, and now we don't.
Well, I'm not even referring to the just gun safety education. I mean, just an overall education.
Yeah.
Because it's shown even with or without guns, the better your education system, the less homicides you're going to have.
Generally, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons there's a lot of or the research shows there's a lot of different reasons for homicide, and we need to.
Indeed.
So there's several topics I've actually researched and things that it always seems like the things that I'm interested in and I start looking at, there isn't enough research to satisfy me. It's like I want more because, so far of all the studies that I've been reading, especially when it comes to like the Second Amendment, the other side, the anti-gun people are all saying that, the pro-gun people are trying to block research into this because they're afraid that if the research was done, they'd show how horrible guns really are. And I'm like, are you reading the same studies that I am? Because the studies that we do have suggest that you're absolutely wrong. And that if we did more studies, I think that your position would be completely debunked entirely. Are you sure you want to go down this route? Because I want the information. I want to know. I mean, you can't make good decisions and make actual good policy without having good information. And a lot of things are left out because of political reasons that shouldn't be left out.
I got to tell you, I've had a CWP in Washington when I lived up in Puget Sound, and
that's where I live.
I live. Where Warren Wheaton Way.
Yes.
Is up there?
I know exactly where that is. Yes, I know exactly where that's at.
That's where I pretty much had my first legal drink. Yeah, Bremerton, Washington. Oh. My ex-girlfriend still lives there. You might know her. I still talk to her. Ellen. Well, I don't want to give her last name. But
oh, yes. Yeah, I know Ellen.
Oh, yeah, that Ellen. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to give her last name. I just realized that would be bad. Oh, God. She's really skinny. I mean, really skinny. But anyways.
That Ellen. Okay.
I definitely know Bremerton, Washington very well. I lived at that goddamn bar at Denny's when you would get off, work. We'd get that bar in there. But I was gonna say, I had extra weapons permit, and the police all knew. I mean, they would even be like, "Hey, Steve, you carrying?" Yeah, because I was fully licensed. But here's the thing: I think my positions have modified over the last year or two, especially. I am still pro Second Amendment. I still think that anybody who can get that is legal to get a license and carry it, I'm fine with that. I do believe very much mandatory you have a firearm safety class. Mandatory. Any longer feel the need for assault rifles. I was back then. Look at, yes, it's freedom of this, freedom of that, and I get that, but I was always on the hill on it. But I gotta tell you, I don't think any fucking civilian should have an assault rifle. If you're so goddamn worried about the government and that you need an assault rifle, first of all, it ain't gonna do jack shit if the government wanted to come after you and not move somewhere else. But I don't think I think that because of all the shootings that are out there, I have to weigh public safety first. And I have now moved, and I don't move very easily. People know me, right? But I have been moved I have changed my position. I think that assault rifles should not be owned by private individuals any longer. I'm sorry.
Could you please make a distinction between a semi-automatic rifle and an assault rifle? What does that mean to you?
One shot. One pull, one shot.
That's every semi-automatic. What makes a assault rifle an assault rifle?
When you can easily,
I like how people try to make the
when you can change the pin and you can make it such that you pull the trigger and more than one thing fires, that's a fully automatic weapon.
It has
Correct.
The easily changeability to back and forth between.
I mean, I don't think anybody should have an AR-15, an AK-47. I mean, if you're a collector, sure, we get that, right? But I mean, it's just too easy to get these weapons any longer. And as much as I hate to say it, America has jumped the fucking shark with this shit. I'm putting the safety of the kids first. I don't think that we need these things around any longer. I know I'm gonna get shit for it, but I'm done with it. The people have been, using these weapons to commit atrocities in a way that in unprecedented numbers. And you don't need a goddamn fucking AK-47 to go fucking shooting squirrels. And if you need an AR-15 to go pig hunting, hog hunting, you're doing fucking something wrong.
Those boars, that can be nasty though. I've seen some ducks too.
Well, no, okay. What's to hone in on this point a little bit more? What do you think the difference is between an M1 used in the World War II era versus an AR? Both are
carbine.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both carbines.
Yeah, carbines. Yeah, I mean, but as far as I know, it's one shot, one pull. But can you change the pin such that an M1 carbine can be a fully automatic weapon?
Yes.
And it's not as easy as changing one pin.
M1s and M4s, carving slings, they called them. AR-15s don't come fully auto, but you can sort of modify them.
It's possible, but not only are you breaking the rules that are throw you in jail forever, but it's not easy.
Dude, come on.
I have one response to that. You're right. You can buy an auto sear. Auto sears will drop straight into an AR platform rifle, and an auto sear will turn your standard AR-15 semi-automatic into fully automatic. It's a small bit of machinery. It's very easy to produce. They used to produce them. They don't anymore. They are licensed. The ones that are out there right now, they're actually serialized. You can buy one. They're probably horrendously expensive, but you can buy one, drop it in your AR. You will now have a fully automatic AR. My contention with that point that you're making is that it seems a non sequitur. It doesn't follow that just because you can make it fully automatic, therefore it should be banned, because we don't have a problem at all with somebody using a modified AR to fire automatic. We don't. There hasn't been a single mass shooting, with the exception of possibly maybe the Las Vegas shooting. We don't actually know, because they won't freaking tell us what actually was going on.
And the Las Vegas,
but no other.
It was not an automatic. It was a bump stock. So it was.
That's what. Yeah, but that's what they say. But when I know people that are ordnance experts in the military that have told me that that is not a bump fired AR that you're hearing on the video. I said there's a whole bunch of confusion around that particular incident, but let's go with the official narrative that such that it is that it was a bump fired AR that he was shooting. There is no single mass shooting that has been committed, or shooting of any kind for that matter, that has been reported to police that utilized a modified AR-15 to make it fully automatic. So I don't
Wait, but other rifles, I don't. And so just because it wasn't the AR-15, so what?
Okay.
You can't just say, look, they've done this on other types of rifles, but they didn't do it on this one. So what?
But that's not without their kids.
There has never been a mass shooting committed with a any gun modified to fully automatic. Have people modified their guns to fully automatic and been busted for it? Yes, and that carries a hell of a consequence to it.
You're saying the AR-15 has never been used in a mass shooting?
An AR-15 that has been modified. Yeah, that has been modified to fully automatic, has never been used in a mass shooting. Yes, the AR-15 has been used in mass shootings, and they were all semi-automatic. And the school shooting in Texas, the kid used a who was not legal to have these weapons at all, used a shotgun and a revolver. So
the fact that if they're, I mean, the legality of them owning them, I think, is irrelevant.
Well, yeah, and that's another point that people bring up as well. Prohibition doesn't work. You know, when you prohibit something, you turn people into criminals, and then the criminals just don't care that you've made it illegal or not. Otherwise, why would half the people in Chicago have a gun to have such a massive gun problem?
Well, it's because they go over to my state and buy them, where we have the most liberal gun laws in the whole state.
Look, and I want to make this very clear. I think it's a comprehensive thing. I don't think it's one size fits all. There needs to be something done. There has to be something done. Nobody in the right mind, whether one other side in the gun control or gun thing on the debate, I don't think anybody thinks that something doesn't need to be done. If you're in that category, please let me know, because that's the person I want to have a conversation with, of why you think something doesn't need to be done. Because clearly we're in a situation, something has to happen.
I want to know what anyone thinks should be done and what it's actually going to accomplish, because any of the solutions I've heard is a bunch of circle jerking and making people try to feel better. But the practical results on the numbers that he was talking about would be so minuscule to be ridiculous. So that's what I'm interested.
Well, hang on. Let's say you got rid of semi-automatics. Would you think that? And not even if they're converted, just semi-automatics. Do you think that would drop the shootings?
No.
Not at all.
Where the bump stocks would.
No, the bump stocks, like I said, the only instance that officially, the official story, the only time a bump stock's ever been used in a mass shooting was the Las Vegas. That particular incident has got a lot of contradictions to it. The stories don't match up. Stories have been changed a lot. I don't honestly know what actually happened, other than somebody clearly shot into a crowd of people and killed a lot of people, 53 people.
Give me a weapon. Give me a weapon they've used in a mass shooting, whether it be semi-automatic or not. Just give me a weapon they've used in a mass shooting.
A 6-shot revolver.
I think that most people can 6 shots. I think people can be licensed for that. But I'm talking about a rifle.
They have the 22 there in Connecticut.
Yeah, rifle, shotgun. Same kid used a shotgun and a revolver.
But again, I'm asking
also the Pulse nightclub was an SKS.
Okay, 50 kids probably died this weekend in Chicago, most likely shot by a Glock. Is that?
Yes.
Are those?
That's my first.
More important than the ones that the 30 that are killed here or 10 that are killed there by an AR. No, they're all people that are dead.
Yeah, that's my first. My first point is always. My first point is always, if you take all homicide, because that's what we actually really care about, is the homicide, or what we're talking about right now, homicide rate. So you've got 3,700 people that were killed by homicide in 2016. Well, only 7% of those were killed with a rifle, and that includes the mass shootings with the AR-15. Well, my point is that when people start going after, like, specifically quote unquote assault rifles, that is not a term that has been properly defined. And if you try and use something like the legislation of the assault weapons ban, then I'm going to push hard on that, because that was ridiculous and does not make sense. Well, yeah, and it didn't make sense. And it didn't make sense.
I remember that ban. It was vague. Right. It was very well thought out. I agree with you.
And had arbitrary feature things that made no difference. But 7% of 7% of 3,700 people that were killed with a rifle. Of all the things, if you're going to push for gun reform of some kind, and your goal is to save lives, which I would hope that would be what somebody's goal is in this debate, is they want to save lives. Why would you target a minuscule and almost statistically insignificant number of deaths by this specific weapon? You should be focusing on handguns.
You guys are in charge.
Okay,
you guys are making
I'll give you the solution.
So, Time Lord, what would you do that's different if you were in charge? Because obviously everybody here agreed something needs to be done. Give me some suggestions what you think needs to be done.
Okay, so one of the biggest problems is that, and California I know has started doing this, other places are trying to, is taking away the guns from the criminals who everybody agrees shouldn't have them. If you're a criminal, a registered felon, and
violent criminal, possession, if you're a violent criminal,
yeah,
I would say
sorry, violent felon. And then you're found in possession and they take them away. And so if you have a record that you had made a purchase and they come to check your house and you still have it, haven't gotten rid of it by legal methods, you're in big trouble. The courts need to cooperate with the federal database to get that done. And they've, like I said, they've started rounding up those and trying to get control on that. But that's the biggest number one thing, is take them away from the idiots who have already proven they can't handle that.
There's a couple of things I could support. I can support the, I forget what it's called. California, I believe, has it, but you have to be careful about how it's worded. Where, you know, if you're, you can file an injunction against somebody to have their firearms removed from them because you believe that they're a threat. A family member can do this. That you're mentally unstable, you own firearms, go before a judge. This is important that you have to do due process first, because California is wanting to simply take the weapons and then you have to try and prove that you're not crazy to have your weapons back. You need to go in and prove somebody crazy before you just take their weapons. But that's something I can absolutely agree with. There needs to be a mechanism for you to call up and say, hey, you know, my ex has gone utterly crazy and she has 4 AR platform rifles in her house right now. I believe that she is a danger, one, to herself and possibly to other people. So you can get it kind of like the emergency court. You can go in, present the information, you know, the proof that you have this. I mean, if it's just your word against hers, you know, who do you believe? But if you have something to substantiate that, then they should immediately go and remove the weapons temporarily until they can be adjudicated sound of mind in order to give them their weapons back. I can absolutely support something like that. My big issue when people come into start talking about what kinds of gun control issues we should run into, the Parkland shooting is a horrible, horrible, horrible event that happened, and it's entirely government's fault. It's not guns' fault. It's a government's fault. They failed on so many occasions. There were so many problems with that kid. And they allowed him to buy weapons because they didn't bother pointing out or putting, huge, huge failure. And when you start looking back, you know, you look at Adam Lanza, there were huge flags. Nobody did a damn thing. That kind of stuff needs to change. If, you know, those social workers, those 17 social workers that dealt with that kid need to lose their jobs. They need to be fired. The FBI.
You know what? I'll go one step further. I think they should be fucking prosecuted for
Yes. I agree.
The civilian equivalent.
That,
you know,
that would make some of the policy changes about the that they put in place because they were concerned about the prison pipeline from school to prison. You know, when these kids are brought up for violent issues, it needs to be made aware. It needs to be documented, and I don't care if they're minors. It needs to be in their record. You know, we need a much better communication between the different agencies, and they actually need to communicate it. And if they show up and this person has just, you know, beat the hell out of 4 people and vandalized the school, they don't, you know, they shouldn't be just turning that teen loose and saying, well, we don't want to contribute to the prison to, you know, we'll put him in counseling and we won't put it on his record because that's going to adversely affect him in the future.
Hello?
I'm on board with you. All right. I'm on board. I'm with you. I'm traveling down the road with you. Okay. So we're on the same page. The only, and again, I'm not suggesting this because I'm just throwing this out there. The only problem I might see is it might end up with some kind of thing like divergence, right? And where you're specifically, you know, segregating a specific portion of youth because you think they might have a higher propensity for crime. And yet we all know we all do stupid shit as a kid.
Sure, we do.
So it would. I'm not saying what you're saying can't be done, but it would have to be very, very well monitored.
Why would you put someone with mental illness in a prison? Why would you even consider that?
Well, if they're adjudicated to be mentally ill, that needs to be treated. I don't think prison's going to help them.
But you know the difficulty of actually getting people with mental illness treatment, especially if they deny that treatment, and especially if they're past the certain age, and that's a big problem with the mental health system in the U.S. So a lot of these,
yeah,
a lot
there's
of
lots of
people
problems.
don't have, so a lot of counselors, a lot of teachers, a lot of family members actually have no recourse. They have no path forward to actually get their family members help.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when I was talking about, being able to, being able to go in and remove somebody's guns because you can show that they're mentally unstable.
Right, but what happens many times is also family members that have firearms and they're living with people with mental illness. So it becomes a problem with the person's individual right that has firearms, but then they have people living in the house that might be a risk. So you have a very
if you have somebody in your house who is mentally unstable, and it can be shown that the person knew this person was mentally unstable and didn't properly secure their firearms, then there should be some culpability there. You either need to get the person help, get them out of your house, or get the guns away from that particular person. Denying the sane person the right to own the weapon shouldn't be the answer. That's not. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So that would require mental health intervention for a lot of people that need it. It would require psychiatric care, and it would require that for a lot of people with a lower income that can't afford psychiatrists. So, you have to be able to go in there and help people. You'd have to have laws that would authorize people to, take people against their will, even if they're
I don't believe that it was a
state.
Yeah, I don't believe the relaxing of the laws that allowed for involuntary commitment for at least some length of time, mental evaluation commitment, were necessarily a good thing. And I'm all for a lot more research into mental illnesses.
Right, but
clearly, there's a problem with them.
People at risk with certain conditions that are actually diagnosed by psychiatrists should definitely be on the list to not be allowed to own firearms. But this is something that the government won't even consider because they think it's a violation of their Second Amendment rights.
No, let me address. By the way,
you're wrong. It's a difference that the courts can't cooperate to get that done. The medical community and the courts have to cooperate to make that happen, and they won't do it.
It's a combined thing. It's a combined effort. But people are saying this is the longest after show they've ever seen. Okay, we've.
What about that 6 hour? What about that 6 hour one the other day?
Channel before. It's fun. We don't mind. Good ideas, but I think when a person has a mental illness and it is a type of mental illness that could lead to potentially a shooting situation, that the rights of the society supersedes the right of the person who has the mental deficiency. And if I was mentally deficient, if I was incompetent enough to own a firearm, I would want the government to say, hey, Steve, you know what? You've been diagnosed with this. You have schizotypical personality traits, or you are mentally delusional, or you're schizophrenic, or whatever. I would be like, you know what? I'm okay with that, right? I don't want to
You're absolutely correct, Steve.
But then again, that makes me sane, right?
Yeah, of course. And one of the arguments that I've heard put out, which I've got a few issues with, is that if we actually did this, because I'm in favor of that. I mean, I don't think that if you're not mentally stable, that you shouldn't have access to weapons of any kind. But nukes, what they're claiming is that
anybody can have nukes,
Yeah, if they put this in effect, well, all you're going to do is drive people who would otherwise seek help for like chronic depression or something. You would drive them away from seeking help in any way, shape, or form because they're going to lose. Yes, because they wouldn't be allowed to.
So do you think that's a kind of fetishizing of gun ownership? Like, you have a culture that fetishizes gun ownership, where it's so important that someone wouldn't seek help because they fear risking losing their firearms?
Potentially. I don't know. I don't think I would call it fetishizing it. You have a right, you have property, and you don't want to be deprived of that right or that property.
Right, but we've already talked about certain situations where society has
there's a greater
purpose in society in terms of
where they probably should be.
Right. So there are certain cases where gun rights are definitely it's valid to restrict gun rights for a greater societal good, because if everyone's kind of in terms of an individual, these are my individual rights, then society as a whole ends up suffering. I mean, this is basic game theory.
Kind of. I have a problem a little bit with saying, the greater societal good. If somebody's truly mentally ill and they're not competent to, the general consensus is this person wouldn't be competent to be trusted with gun ownership, then they should be removed from that person for their own good, not necessarily societal good, although their societal good would also be in part. But if you start going down the road of, well, for the greater good of the society, we quickly can start stripping everybody of their rights, because there can be arguments made.
And this is why certain countries, and many countries apart from the U.S., have restricted guns for that very reason, because they've recognized this is something that benefits society as a whole. I mean, there's real philosophy and theory around this. It's not, some random, musings of a bunch of kind of liberals and kind of crazy people. I mean, there's real reasons why governments and societies do this.
I completely agree with that, and I'm an individualist. I believe the individual is more important than the society.
Fair enough. Now, in terms of gun violence, you realize that there's different types of gun violence, in the sense of the majority of mass shootings you could probably link to mental illness, but then you said, of course, gun violence in Chicago or something like that is
gang violence.
Not really. Violence with handguns stuff, just basic criminality is not necessarily mental illness, but that's also a result of kind of a societal upbringing. I mean, everything we know about epigenetics, we can't really separate a person from their environment, the way they grow up. So also, you've made a comment previously where you said you think welfare is immoral, but all these things add up to a situation that proliferates violence.
I have to be specific there. On a federal level, welfare is immoral.
Now, where else are you going to get a social safety net?
A state can institute, in the United States, I should say a state. That gets a little confusing, because when most people say a state, they mean a country. Right. And in the United States, it means just one of the states. But no, if Washington State wanted to implement some welfare programs for the citizens of their state, then I would be, in principle, okay with that. I think it would still be a bad idea on a state level, but I wouldn't have any particular issue with it, because if I disagreed with how it was being handled or how it was being run, I could move.
Now, what would be your philosophy behind that? Why are you in principle against welfare?
The federal welfare? It's the same reason that I'm in principle against socialism. The problem with these programs is anonymity. As soon as you put anonymity into the mix, you have a whole bunch of huge problems, and immoral acts take place left and right. There is no way that a federal system is, have you tried, change tack just a little bit, have you tried actually helping somebody? With your own money, seen somebody who is struggling and gone out and tried to help them personally. It is not easy. I've tried it, and I have failed. The person is still a waste of space, still making bad decisions. It's not easy to really help people. There are a lot of different reasons why people are in poverty. Sometimes it's because they make bad choices. Sometimes they have some unfortunate events happen to them and they genuinely need a hand and they need some help. Some people choose to be poor because there is something else that is more.
People choose to be poor?
Yes, absolutely.
So do you believe, so do you believe in free will?
As far as a utilitarian, useful, I can make decisions, yes.
Right, but in terms of a libertarian type of free will?
No, I don't.
Now, what do you mean by libertarian?
Well, you're saying people choose to be poor. People are making choices, right? So, in everything we know about science, people aren't making choices to do certain things apart from everything that's happened in their past, not only in their past, but in their parents' past. All these things are related. So in terms of a social safety net, if you put one in place, is that going to fix all the problems currently going on? No. But in terms of a long-term societal outcome, these type of social safety nets are things.
The long-term societal outcome of federal welfare programs, at least in the United States, has been negative. It has not been positive.
Metric?
By any objective metric you
what
want
kind
to,
of social
to give.
What kind of social safety net are we talking about in the U.S., one of the only countries that doesn't have health care as a basic human right?
Right.
I mean, how can
the reason for that is because you don't get the right to somebody else's labor. That's
right.
why it's not considered a human right.
People that grow up in a poverty, that are constantly worried about losing their jobs and not having health care and not being able to see a doctor, this doesn't affect the way people think and the way people develop, the way kids develop?
Oh, I'm sure it probably does.
Right. This doesn't, I mean, you don't think this affects you? Because these are people that are living around you. They're living in your society. These are people that may turn to crime. These are people that
Poverty,
are filling up jails.
There isn't a very strong case.
You don't think there's an expenditure to institutionalizing and criminalizing and putting people in jail, having a high prison population? You don't think that money would be better spent on a kind of system that would help over time kind of eradicate this type of pathological, actions of, humans that end up evolving through no fault of their own? We know how gene expression works. We know how your parent,
Yes, there's definitely
children.
Yeah, there's definitely, like employment resistant genes. Yes. And if there were a program that could be implemented that achieved what you just stated the objective would be, then I could get behind that. The problem is that federal welfare in the United States doesn't achieve that. The two statistics that are damning to federal welfare in the United States is that in 1963, the poverty rate in the United States was 14.3%. In 2016, the poverty rate, and that's when they implemented most of the war on poverty. That's when most of the Social Security nets started coming into place. There were a few that came in a little earlier, such as Social Security. But the real war on poverty began in the mid-60s. In 2016, the poverty rate in the United States was 14.3%. In that amount of time, we've spent well over $1 trillion, and the percentage of people living in poverty in the United States has not changed significantly, and in absolute numbers has increased. We also have generational welfare families. Those two statistics show that the federal welfare program simply isn't working. For every single person that you can show that the welfare program actually helped them get out of poverty, I can show you 1.3 people who fell into poverty and never escaped. It is failed.
I mean, is this a failure of individual people? Is this a failure of the system and the way it's set up? Because, you're talking about a welfare state, but people, they don't have health care. People don't, a lot of people can't afford education, especially post-secondary education. There's a lot of other types of social safety nets that doesn't involve just having food stamps.
Well, but the post-secondary education system has got a lot of other problems, and one of the big ones is government involvement in the system itself. As far as healthcare comes, that one's a sticky one. I understand the argument of, being able to access healthcare, but again, nobody has the right to somebody else's labor. So, rights can't impact somebody else negatively.
But that's an indirect argument against any form of taxation at all, because you really, that's what you're doing when government's taxing other people.
I don't have, because people keep trying to use, like, say, police, fire, ambulance services, things like that. I pay taxes, a lot of taxes, and programs that I can access that are paid for with my tax money, I don't fundamentally disagree with them in principle. I'd like to see what the program actually accomplishes and whether that's a good use of the money. But when I'm have money taken away from me to give to somebody else, and I don't get to access that program for my own benefit, like any means tested programs, that to me is immoral. That's theft.
Right, but and then you end up with the consequence of the society you live in and the people around you when you have that type of attitude. You have to accept those consequences. You have to accept that there's going to be people that are going to break into your car and try to steal shit. And I'm not saying that they're justified for doing that, or it's a good thing that they're doing that, but we understand that this is a consequence if that's the kind of attitude where you're kind of living on your own isolated island. It's it doesn't work.
The issue that I have is on a federal level. It has proven, I mean, the numbers don't lie, it is ineffective. The poverty rate had been decreasing in the United States about 1% a year until 1963, and then it flatlined.
Now, how does that compare to other countries that have adopted a different type of policies, where they have implemented a kind of socialized healthcare system, where they have allowed lower cost of post-secondary education? Countries like I'm not talking Sweden or Norway, but maybe Canada, the UK. I mean, how does the US stack up with those countries?
I live, well, there's a reason that wealthy individuals from foreign countries come to the United States to get their health care or to get their major procedures done. There's a reason people in Canada come down here to have their cancer surgery done, because if they waited in Canada, they'd die first. I live 24 miles south of the Canadian border. I drive in Canada.
I think that's a little bit of.
I would not want to. I think that's a false.
I disagree with that.
I'm just going to cut in right here for a second. I don't know a single person who's had cancer that hasn't received the treatment they need in Canada.
I'm not saying that they're denied.
My girlfriend had cancer and is only alive right now because they had health care. And their family wouldn't have been able to afford treatment in the U.S. However, they got treated when they were 19. They had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they're quite alive right now and into their 30s. So
I'm not saying that everybody. I'm not saying that everybody.
No, I have never heard of a single person. Because we
Stefan Molyneux. I gotta jump in here, administrative stuff real quick. We are going off air here in a minute here or two. Okay, so here's the thing though. This is actually really interesting to me. I'm actually enjoying this conversation. I think other people are as well, and it would have been an amazing topic for Non-Sequitur Show or Debate Roulette or whatever. I could set this up streaming continued. It would take about 10 minutes. If people want to continue to listen to it, I don't mind doing that. I find this to be a very interesting topic. And I do think that is important when we talk about these things because they are kind of atypical. But I do think things like Medicare is, in theory, something that should be, for everybody. I mean, I think that should be a basic human thing. I know it's easier said than done, but that should be at least the goal. But it's up to you guys. If the live chat, if they want something to listen to tonight, I will set this up. It doesn't take me that long, and I will stream
go for it.
More if you guys want to. And Rags, welcome, by the way. I didn't get a hold of you today, and I was supposed to get a hold of Ian. I didn't get a chance. Shit happened. Whatever. Deal with it. But I'll try to get with you in the next couple of days. I wanted to pick your brain on a few things. Not that you have much to pick, but just in case you did.
Hi,
say hi to Rags?
Hi.
Whatever. Rags, are you digging this conversation?
People talking about.
Be setting this up. If Dave can hold off for a minute, and then I can just kind of continue over, and may not even have to really change much. It's just start a new stream. So just give me a few minutes.
Well, it's late as fuck.
Yeah, it really is. I
should have on it. Maybe do it another day. Because it's like 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I you know what, I think you're
it's right. Pretty late.
There's other stuff to go listen to right now because you go watch the Non-Sequitur Show if you haven't watched it. It was weird today. It was weird. Not gonna front. It was weird.
Well,
how weird
was it?
That's a good characterization.
The Earth is an inverted trapezoid or something like that.
The Earth is a tampon.
It was
the Earth turning into a fucking tampon with all these feminists everywhere.
It was so much twists and turns, Rags. I don't know how to classify it.
That's what I got to talk to you about, Rags. We've got Sargon coming up, and I really need a primer.
Should be a productive conversation.
And maybe, I mean, I don't care if it's on air or off air, it doesn't matter. This whole social justice warrior shit, oh my fucking God. I don't know how you people do it. I know Dave's got to go. We want to keep this going for a few more minutes. The amount of shit that we've already gotten for having Sargon on is fucking ridiculous. Look, and I don't mean any disrespect for anybody. If you don't want to watch something, don't watch it, but don't give somebody a platform. If the people want the person to have a platform and the owners of the channel want to have it on there. I am not having Sargon on for his notoriety. I couldn't care. I didn't arrange any of this shit. I already had an SJW come after me saying, Steve, you're just doing this for the numbers and you're giving a fucking racist blah, 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 platform, blah, blah. I'm like, fuck off. I don't have time for that bullshit. I just don't have the propensity to sit there and try to defend that level of fuckery. Okay, because it's so far removed from reality. That is not why we're having Sargon on. I don't even know Sargon's positions that much. I just know that the things I have watched from him, I've kind of enjoyed. Okay, sue me.
I think
I do understand.
Steve, I think it would be a good idea if you have someone like Sargon on to have an equally powerful person to counter something he says. That's the only thing. Instead of giving him kind of 3 hours of just blabbing on, bring someone on that. So if you want a primer, watch Sargon's 2 discussions with Destiny. That's about 7 hours of kind of back and forth. But, someone like Steve Bonnell at least has the mental capacity to talk to someone like Sargon. So if you bring someone like that on, that might make for much more interesting discussion than having just Sargon kind of
somebody coming on that should be
stuff for 2-3 hours nonstop unchallenged, and you get a lot of shit from people.
We will be challenged. I mean, I don't want a fucking one-sided conversation. But I mean, I don't agree with Sargon on a lot of shit. I read some shit that he believes, and I'm like, I don't buy any of that stuff. But when it comes to this progressive social justice warrior stuff and third wave feminism, I'm on board with that with him. I think it is dangerous. I think it is counterproductive. I think they do silence the competition. I agree with Rags and Ian. What's Ian's last name, Rags?
Ian Moss Chong.
So I get that. And because of that, people have already come after me going, oh, look at Steve, man. He hates women kind of shit. I'm like, are you fucking out of your mind?
Really? But I mean, those are kind of the easy things that everyone hates. No one likes extremists on either side. So it's easy to say, well, Sargon doesn't like extremist leftists. He doesn't like extremist rightists. When you get to meat of the issues, like, the innate differences and the kind of the mental thought processes of male and females that predispose males to take certain professions over females, stuff like that, that's been completely debunked in any type of serious scientific field. And obviously these are the small minutiae that Sargon tries to... Okay.
Hold that thought. I'm going to go and stop the stream. Right? Right?
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Good night, fellas.
Good night.
And you can keep talking after I mute, after I deafen it. Like I'm not even here. I'm not. And thank you for joining, because I've been asking. This has been the non-sequitur after show of Flat Earth, O.J. Simpson, 9/11 Illuminati. Roll somehow got into. It's actually a good discussion. And RussianVids. Basically a whole bunch of unrelated shit that has nothing to do with any of it. Or any of... It's all non-sequitur, which seems quite apropos. Everyone have a good evening. This is your producer of the Non-Sequitur Show, David Fulton, on Steve McCrae's channel. And have a good morning, wherever you're at.